Together, we will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to Trisha getting it started early over there on Rumble. What does she say? No glitches, good volume, good to see you. Much love, Zach. By the way, did you get my email about O versus Q? It should be near the top of your emails. No, and I was just looking, and I think that most people would be surprised at just how many emails I actually get on a given day. It's overwhelming, if I can be perfectly honest with you. So, no, I haven't seen it yet, and I'm actually looking for it right now. But Oh, there it is. I just found it. Just found it. All right. Cursive O is the tail at the top. Cursive Q is the tail at the bottom. Yeah, I know. But I think that what it is it's a nod, right? I mean, it's something that can be interpreted. It can be explained away, or it can be picked up by anons hoping to find something. So, you know. Like I said the other night, it is technically an O, but you could perceive it as a Q. Hold on, I'm just like deleting dozens and dozens of emails. I also made my first short on Rumble last night. All right, guys. Well, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to get into it right about now. All right, my friends, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. Also, Trisha also said, apparently, I didn't proofread before hitting send. That's okay. That's not a problem. I can always decode on the fly. Do what I can. All right, so let me just get my pilled chat set up over here. Judy the Lady Pug, thank you very much for the cookie. I appreciate it. All right, so we have a ton of stuff to get through today. I think I'm dealing with a bit of a stomach bug or something like that, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to make it through the entirety of the information I have prepared for you today, and we're going to do our best. But let me begin today by first giving a big shout out to today's sponsor. That's going to be my friends over here at Brightcore. Now, you guys, did you know that 1 in 2 people, fully half of everyone, is going to be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their lifetime? That's not the way that it used to be. You got to ask yourself, why is this happening? Because in today's world, we are constantly exposed to a literal toxic cloud of poisons. We've got polluted air, we've got chemical-laced foods and water, we've got toxins literally surrounding us every single day. All of that sludge is causing our bodies to make abnormal cell changes, and that leads to the unfortunate diagnoses. And yet, the solution is not another synthetic drugs, but in fact, it's what's coming to us from nature. So here, in this recent study, they examined the probiotic bacteria they find in kimchi and highlighted just how it has cancer preventative potential. It shows that these strains of bacteria and the probiotics in the kimchi might help support the body's natural defenses at the cellular level. Obviously, that's where the cancer begins. So kimchi supports this process because 70 to 80% of your immune system resides right there in your gut microbiome. And kimchi's 900 or more probiotic strains help reinforce that immune network against toxins that are completely beyond your control. You can never get away 100% entirely from all of that stuff that's making people sick. And it goes way beyond that, because kimchi is also known for helping to reduce inflammation, support detoxification, strengthen digestion, and for its immune boosting potential. So that's why Brightcore has created Kimchi 1 to make the benefits of traditionally fermented kimchi accessible, consistent, and most importantly, easy to use as part of your daily routine. And today you guys can get 25% off your order, but you got to use the code REDPILL at the link below, or you can get an even better deal by calling Brightcore at 888-383-5996. Now, you can use that QR code on screen to get to the link, or you can just go right below this video. The link is right there, but you got to use that code REDPILL. What's even better is that when you call, you are going to get a special offer. They're going to give you up to 50% off, and you might even get a free gift. That number again is 888-383-5996. Detox your body, rebuild your gut, and take your health into your hands starting today. Thank you so much to the good folks over there at Brightcore. Really appreciate them. All right. Now, let me also say, Trisha says, I did perceive it as a Q. Okay. Either way, wait a second. So the Q has the tail. Oh, yeah, you said a cursive O is the tail at the top, cursive Q is the tail at the bottom. Yeah. Okay. I get it. I understand. Either way, it's cool. I'm just saying my point ultimately was that depending on the audience, people are going to perceive it differently. I think amongst our audience, clearly people saw that and they immediately grabbed onto it, and it was consequential. You know, there was something else as well. And Enoch highlighted this, the name of the file. Hold on. I got to find my bookmark from Enoch. You know, and that's not going to be easy to do because I probably bookmark hundreds of tweets every single day. But let me find this. I just got to go back a couple of days. Yeah, the file name for the graphic had, I can't remember what it was, but it was something that was Anon-ish as well. And of course, somebody created that file name on purpose, and you see those two things together, and it just makes me think that obviously they know what they're doing. Most importantly, President Trump has a media team, social media team, that they lean into this. They do it on purpose. So that was another reason why I felt that it was absolutely intentional. Okay. Gosh, am I on yesterday? Okay, I'm still not quite back to the State of the Union. He didn't delete it, did he? Or did they must have deleted my my bookmark of it. That's weird. Okay, there he is. Elinocle. You got to search for Elinocle. Okay. So boom, boom, boom. And of course, he posts a lot too. So let me jump back through here. Okay. So, okay. So yeah, the title of the image was Signal 2026-223-150-224_003. So Signal, that's what was consequential. The idea that it was directly a signal to people who might be paying attention. All right, getting into the news. First of all, this was probably one of the biggest stories to break this week. But it turns out that Kash Patel has determined that the Biden FBI secretly obtained phone records of Kash Patel and Susie Wiles during the Trump classified documents investigation. Now, it didn't start with Jack Smith. It actually started with the FBI, and then they handed all of this stuff over to Jack Smith when he actually officially began the investigation into President Trump. So the FBI was listening to the phone records, the phone calls. They actually got the data from both Kash and Susie. They did this all the way back in 2022. They continued up until 2023, and then they transitioned it over into the special counsel's investigation. It is outrageous and deeply alarming that the previous FBI leadership secretly subpoenaed my own phone records, along with those of now White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, using flimsy pretexts and burying the entire process in prohibited case files designed to evade all oversight. So much like the secret broom closet that they talked about, this was cataloged incorrectly so that Cash, if he did end up becoming the director of the FBI, would not be able to come in and immediately determine what happened. Now, Cash also, when he learned about this, he fired at least 10 current FBI officials that were involved in these secret subpoenas to get he and Susie Wiles' phone records. What's also shocking about this, and probably not surprising, is that when Kash Patel took over the FBI, the people who were involved, the people who knew about it, they made sure not to say anything. They were like, guys, we're just going to sit on this. Now that Cash is the director of the FBI, we certainly don't want him knowing that we were secretly and improperly listening to his phone conversations and getting a hold of his phone records, because if he found out, we would probably lose our jobs. And of course, we want to make sure we keep these sweet federal jobs for as long as we can. It actually gets much worse, because not only did the FBI get the subpoena for Kash Patel's phone records and Susie Wiles' phone records, they also used Susie Wiles' own lawyer to record live conversations with Susie Wiles. So the FBI listened to privileged conversations between Susie Wiles and her lawyer. Her lawyer knew, and the lawyer never told Susie Wiles. The lawyer gave the FBI the go-ahead to listen to those live calls. That is highly, highly inappropriate. And that lawyer should probably be disbarred. They should not be allowed to practice law. Now, I haven't heard anything from Susie Wiles on this front, but it is a major, major stab in the back. And I would have to imagine she has got to be pretty pissed. Now, there's no coincidences here. The fact that they listened to these two people specifically, they knew that Kash Patel was likely going to be nominated to be director of the FBI if President Trump won in 2024. And they knew that Susie Wiles was, of course, probably going to be his chief of staff. She was the woman behind the curtain, if you will. So they subpoenaed these records beginning in 2022. They were both private citizens. There was really no good reason for them to be listening to them. It was a federal probe of President Trump. Now, they would have had to have made the case that something leading them to Susie Wiles and Kash Patel might bring about some knowledge of illegal actions. And you guys know that neither of them were doing that stuff. I would really like to know who were the FBI agents that got fired as a result of this. Now, the first news outlet to report on this was Reuters. And these, of course, as stated, were orders given during the Biden administration. I'd also like to know why. Well, no, they can't be arrested. They got subpoenas. I mean, they did it legally, but it was just improper. We don't know what the predicate was, what the affidavit, the probable cause affidavit was to say. Maybe this will come out, and maybe we'll find that there is an illegal pathway that they took to do it, which would hopefully lead the FBI to bring charges against them. But remember, we can't just go arresting people. Like, there has to be a charge that you can bring against them so that they can be indicted. And just because they're indicted doesn't mean that they're going to be rounded up and have their houses raided. So yeah, there's a process that has to be gone through. So I would hope that we would get more information about this, especially considering that it's the current director of the FBI and the current chief of staff at the White House. But as of right now, this is as much information as we have. But most people are not reporting on the seriousness of Susie Wiles' lawyer giving them access to Susie Wiles. Now, as a lawyer, he was being paid to represent Susie Wiles. And when you're paying your lawyer, those conversations are privileged. I don't think that he broke a law in doing that, but he certainly broke rules of ethics. So that's why I say he should be disbarred. He should not be allowed to practice law. And to be honest, I don't know if it was a man or a woman. I just know it was Susie Wiles' lawyer, and I'm assuming that it was a man. But what's also a question that I think needs to be asked is, how did the FBI convince her lawyer to allow them to listen to those conversations? I mean, any lawyer worth their salt would know that that's not something you do. So either that person is a snake in the grass, or the FBI threatened that lawyer with criminal prosecution and convinced them that if they didn't allow for the improper surveillance of Susie Wiles' conversations with a lawyer, whom, of course, she might be prone to say things that she wouldn't otherwise say because it would be a privileged conversation, I'm sure that they probably put some pressure on them. And, you know, somebody said sue the lawyer. I don't know that you can sue the lawyer for that. I mean, I think the only thing that I'm aware of, it would be a complaint to the Bar Association. But then, you know, the Bar Association is corrupt as all get out too. They're probably totally cool that somebody would turn and be a rat on Susie Wiles. So we need more information about this, but I expect this story to snowball out. And I'm really interested to find out who these 10 people were, everything else that they worked on. Were they also involved in the other witch hunts against President Trump? Is there going to be a criminal investigation because of perhaps undue pressure that was put on that lawyer? I'd really like to see a statement from Susie Wiles as well. And why don't we just go ahead and run over to X and let's see if Susie Wiles has commented on this yet. Okay. So yeah, right here. In 2023, the FBI recorded a phone call between Wiles and her attorney. According to two FBI officials, Wiles' attorney was aware that the call was being recorded, consented to it, but Susie was not. That's all that I've read about this. Okay. And I don't see anybody having published a statement from Susie. Let's hear this from John Solomon. Maybe he's got more information than I did.
I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you as always from the nation's capital, and we are going to break some big news on the show. Some of it you may have seen. Some of it is moving right now at justthenews.com. Let me get to the most urgent news that just happened. Just a few minutes ago, FBI officials confirmed to Just the News that the Bureau spied on its future director, Kash Patel, back when he was a private citizen in 23, by getting his phone records. That's right. He wasn't the only one around President Trump that happened to. They also did it to current White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. Sources telling us that both of those phone record seizures were through grand jury subpoenas and were focused on allegations involving the classified documents case against President Trump. That's the one that eventually led to the raid at Mar-a-Lago, then the appointment of Jack Smith, then the indictment of President Trump related to those documents that were found in his home, and then the dismissal of the case. Now, this is a pretty significant piece of information, not only because the Bureau was spying on its future leader, but also because at the end of the day, there's no evidence that Kash Patel or Susie Wiles did anything wrong. They were never charged. They were never accused of any wrongdoing. But their phone records rifled through, like now we know, 8 or 9 members of Congress, scores of targets in the January 6th investigation, the dragnet of the FBI, the Justice Department, the intelligence community against all people who were conservative or associated with President Trump widens by the day. The behavior of those agencies, particularly under Joe Biden, becoming more troubling by the day.
All right, so ultimately, I think the best thing we can hope for to arise from this situation is for Kash Patel to fire anyone who had any proximity to this. And again, because nobody was going to tell Kash Patel that this happened, these people were simply hoping to bide their time and to be able to pretty much just, wait a second. Okay, so something was off. Okay, listen, guys. That audio from John Solomon sounded like that to me as well. And I know that after yesterday, everybody is going to, pick apart every single audio thing we have. But I have this audio has not changed since yesterday when everybody said ultimately it was good. And so if there's anything funky with any of the videos that we hear today, trust me, is going to be on behalf of the person who originally posted that video. And I'm not going to be able to do anything to change it. Okay. So, also very, very big, and I talked about this on Adel's show, but it appears, based upon a report coming from the Washington Post, so take it with a grain of salt, although this backs up what I said maybe a week or so ago from John Solomon, that President Trump was preparing to do a national security briefing with members of Congress to tell them just how important it is that we get the SAVE Act passed, and ultimately, in a larger sense, that we secure the election system here in the United States based upon the presence of foreign interference in past elections. Now, we've talked about a lot of different ways that the election was meddled with. But as I said over on Adel's show, you take a look at Fulton County and anything that you could potentially attribute to malfeasance, rather than criminality. I think that they're probably looking to do that, although I do anticipate people are going to be charged in Fulton County. The criminal and trial process that will result from those indictments is most likely going to take place after the midterm elections, just based upon how slow the judicial system in the United States is. However, if they can attribute certain actions of fraud or illegality to foreign interference, that is a much more immediate threat that would require immediate action. So, President Trump allegedly has a 17-page draft executive order that claims China interfered in the 2020 election. Also, go back to President Trump's first term. John Ratcliffe, as the director of national intelligence, put out that work product at the tail end of the administration saying that China had interfered in the 2020 election. And this executive order will be a basis to declare a national emergency. Also, keeping in mind that election infrastructure is national security based. The electronic voting machines are going to fall under that national infrastructure executive order. And this would be a national emergency that would unlock extraordinary presidential power, specifically over voting. So that's going to allow President Trump to ban mail-in ballots nationwide. He's going to frame them as a vector for foreign interference. We've seen all of the different ways that could be and has been done in the past. Also going to restrict or ban, please, thank you, Jesus, electronic voting machines under the notion that they can be compromised by foreign actors. We know, of course, that they can. And also, very importantly, withhold federal funding and certifications from any states or counties that are found to be operating in noncompliance. And we've individually gone over every single state and most of the counties that have been the worst offenders in this area during the last 5-6 years of harping on election integrity issues because of what happened in the 2020 election. So I think that despite the lack of action coming from the Senate with regard to the SAVE Act, as President Trump said to us not that long ago, even if the Senate is unwilling or unable to act, he is using a novel legal theory that he believes is brilliant to give us exactly what we've been asking for. If he is to sign this executive order and he's to do it in the coming days, it will undoubtedly be in place, and the entirety of the United States will be forced to implement these changes before the midterm elections in November. Now, it's important because we've already got primary elections going on right now. We need to get this in place, and I would be looking for President Trump to be dropping this very, very soon. How long have they been cheating, Eric? How long have people been voting? I think that's the only way you can look at it. I think that cheating is an evil that comes along with the influence of evil people. And evil people are always trying to get more power. They're always trying to get the upper hand. They are always trying to put themselves into a position where they will have power and influence over people around them. So, yeah, I don't think that we've ever had truly secure elections in this country. I think it's gotten progressively worse over the years. And in, say, the last decade, certainly since Barack Hussein Obama, there were some really fundamental changes to the election system that came along under him. But yeah, since that time, in the advent of electronic voting machines, it's been totally fake and gay. So we are going to get there, but we're just waiting for President Trump to sign the order. But I just love it. 17-page draft executive order. China, talking about China. All right. Now, we also have another update in regards to the State of the Union coming from CNN. Apparently, President Trump gained support during that State of the Union speech. So that speech, we've talked about it plenty, but I think that it was highly consequential. I thought he did a great job. I think all of the traps that he set for the commies. Well, I'm not going to say Democrats and Republicans anymore. I'm going to say patriots and deep state, because I'm just like, in my own head, I'm like, it's just. We got bad Democrats, we got bad Republicans, and I know that we live in this sort of bicameral political world where we've got two political parties, and that's pretty much it. There's other parties, but they really don't matter. You've got the two established power centers in the political world. And although they call themselves Democrats and they call themselves Republicans, it's really us against them, right? I mean, it's the patriots, it's the people versus the deep state. And you've got people aligned with the deep state across political spectrums. So after that State of the Union address, President Trump set all kinds of traps for the patriots versus the criminal syndicate. I like that, too. Yeah, the transnational criminal organization currently operating inside the United States of America. And laying out all of those policies, I thought he did such a wonderful job. 64% of the people who watched the speech believe that President Trump's policies are moving the United States in the right direction. And they did surveys as they were having people watch. And that 64% of respondents had a very or somewhat positive reaction to the address. It was nearly 2 hours, and I thought it was wonderful. By contrast, only 36% said they had a somewhat negative or very negative response. And in more positive news, 65% said they had a lot of or some confidence in President Trump's ability to provide real leadership for the country, compared to 35% who said they had no confidence. They also found that 64% believe the policies President Trump proposed are going to move the country in the right direction, while the other 36% said that policies would move people in the wrong direction. Those people are commies. Those people are the deep state. President Trump called on lawmakers to ban institutional investing. He called for the creation of a framework to allow people like you and I to join the thrift savings plan and get matching funds from the United States government in our 401k. And ultimately, I think that President Trump did what he set out to do. He drew a very clear distinction between Americans and the people who hate us. And it just so happens that the people who hate us are elected representatives living and working in Washington, D.C. Now, yesterday, somebody had pointed out to me that Representative Al Green, the guy who had the sign that said "Black people rent apes," allegedly, he raped a former aide. Her name was Lucinda Daniels, and that happened in May of 2007. He then bribed Lucinda Daniels with $875,000 using that secret slush fund that Congress appropriated, and they have already paid out over $17 million over the years, because apparently these people can't keep their dicks in their pants, and as soon as they get somebody in their office alone with them, doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman, they're pulling it out, and they're trying to see if they can get a little noogie. So these are our taxes that are being used to hush people up, stop them from speaking, stop them from filing charges against members of Congress. This should not ever happen. None of us should be forced to pay for the perversions of these satanic monsters in Washington, D.C. None of these people should even be in Congress. But you can see, I went and looked this up, and this is not fake news. Lucinda Davis definitely, she definitely reported being sexually assaulted by Al Green, and Al Green paid her off. There's no other way around it. You can't deny it. Now, on top of that, there has been quite a bit of discussion about actually bringing this information to the American public. I think I mentioned this the other day, but Nancy Mace has suggested publishing the data from this sexual misconduct fund. And so she is now moving to force a House vote to release all of the data from this, including the congressmen and senators that have sexually assaulted or sexually harassed people working in the Capitol. Also, how much money have been paid out based upon whom. She has dropped this legislative Moab at the Capitol. Now she will be forcing the vote because, of course, a lot of these people who are probably sitting there in Congress have benefited from this taxpayer-funded slush fund to pay off the people that they have sexually abused. So she put out a press release. This resolution directs the Committee on Ethics to preserve all documents and investigative materials related to violations or alleged violations of sexual harassment rules under Clause 9 and Clause 18 of Rule 23 of the Rules of the House of Representatives. The committee would be required to publicly release all reports, conclusions, draft reports, recommendations, and accompanying materials within 60 days of adoption. Personally identifiable information of victims or alleged victims would be redacted to protect their privacy. Now, this is the perfect time to do this because everybody is talking about the Epstein files. We've got a lot more Epstein stuff to talk about today. Obviously, I've been talking about Tony Gonzalez a lot recently. Many people are asking for Tony to step down and just walk away because, of course, he had an affair with a woman. He broke up a family, and then she set herself on fire, leaving an 8-year-old boy without a mother. Gonzalez, of course, still continues to deny the affair. He says it's blackmail and political attacks, but even the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights is currently wrapping up a review on Tony's affair. They're sending its way to ethics any day now, and his primary in-person voting begins March 3rd. So she said, if you sexually harass someone in Congress, you do not get to hide behind closed doors. Tony Gonzalez showed us what is happening in Congress, but he's not the only one. The American people deserve answers. Staff deserve answers. Women deserve answers. No more protection for predators in Congress. We are going to shine a light on every single one of them. You know, one thing that I kind of wish that I wish that they would just talk about this in like genderless terms. Sure, you know, women are targeted in these places. But there is a lot of closeted homosexuals in Congress, and those men are going after young men and, you know, grown men in the exact same way they're going after women. I would hazard a guess and say that there's probably more men that are being sexually harassed or abused in Congress than women, because I think more of them are gay and they just don't admit it. I think that there's a lot of sexual debauchery that happens in Congress. I think that you've got a lot of representatives and senators who are having sex with each other and cheating on their wives and cheating on their husbands. There have been a number of documented cases very recently. But I think that they need to be honest about this. It's not just women that are being victimized. It's men. I do believe that a man is going to be less likely to say something than a woman to say something about it. But we need to be honest about this, and we need to expose each and every one of these people. Ultimately, I don't care if people are gay. It has nothing to do with me. I care about your policy. I care about, you know, the way that you represent. I don't like liars. You shouldn't be there if you're planning to be a liar, although unfortunately that's what it's become. But if anybody is sexually assaulting or abusing any individual, male, female, or whatever, then they need to be exposed, and this stuff should be released. So she says the American people deserve answers. She's putting this forward as a privileged resolution on March 4th. That will force House leadership to schedule a vote within 2 legislative days. Can you imagine anybody in Congress coming forward and saying, hold on a second. Oh, Nancy, slow down. Slow down, Nancy. I don't know if we really want to release this information to the public. If anybody comes forward and publicly states that they don't support Nancy Mace, I would suggest that they're probably on that list, that they most likely have been responsible for the abuse, harassment, or rape of one or more people. And we're probably going to find out that there's been many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars paid out on their behalf. So either these people do the right thing or they get their asses exposed. There is no way for this to not be a hot button topic. Now that Nancy Mace is pushing it, now that other people are interested in it, now that people are paying attention finally to the Epstein files and they recognize that we have a problem with the elites in this country doing whatever they want to, believing that they're above the law, and frankly, up until this point, proceeding as if they are above the law because their friends are the ones making the laws. Their friends oftentimes are the ones engaging in these various behaviors. No, she's not, Mr. Fat. Nancy Mace is a Christian. And as far as I know, she's not a AIPAC recipient either. That may be something that we can look up, but she is a Christian. So, yeah, this is definitely something that I think right now is the time to do this. Now, okay, so I know I actually bookmarked this the other day, but I didn't play it. Let's listen.
Good morning, everyone. Just watching this whole Tony Gonzalez thing play out, Corey Mills thing play out, the Ilana Mar thing play out, the Stacey Plaskett thing play out, all the things. The reason that no one is ever held accountable here in Congress for their transgressions is because both sides protect the other. They want power over the people, and so nothing happens. You can sexually harass your employees on the Hill, and there's literally no accountability, no responsibility, no transparency. This stuff goes on all the time. In fact, I filed a resolution last night that would expose sexual harassment by members of Congress here. The only question is, do I file it as a privileged motion?
All right, so she's made her mind up, and it is going to be a privileged motion. Now, Nancy Mace is not perfect. All right, she came forward and said that her ex had drugged and raped her or something like that, or had gotten her drunk and then taken video footage of her or something. Here's what really happened. Nancy Mace had a boyfriend. They had security cameras in their house. They got naked together. Okay, they had consenting sex. And then they broke up. And then she started making claims against him, and she made them from the floor of Congress so that she was covered by speech and debate. She never went to the police. She never tried to file charges against him. And he can't file charges against her because of the way she brought it up. I do have a problem with that. However, in my mind, this will redeem any problems that she may have related to that. All right. So Lauren Boebert is in favor of this. Anna Paulina Luna is in favor of this. Here is Boebert commenting on the issue.
Congresswoman, so obviously you called on Congressman Gonzalez.
You know what? They are Midas, I bet you, is going to give me a strike. So I'm not going to play that because they're pieces of shit. All right. Now, also, in addition to that, the Doge Committee is taking this up as an issue as well. All right. That is chaired by our man inside, Tim Burchett. He's announced that he's actually now launching hearings to determine exactly how many federal dollars have been spent on this congressional slush fund. We know about $17 million, considering how many congressmen there are, how many senators there are, how many staffers there are. I would suggest that probably far more than $17 million has been spent. They probably had to pay off a lot of sexual misconduct claims, a lot of rape claims. And now Anna Paulina Luna has asked Tim, because they're both on the Doge Committee, to take this up and to hold hearings on it. So whether or not this privilege motion from Nancy Mace is able to go through, we may just see the information revealed as a result of the Doge Committee. Now, Luna said, Tim is my friend, and I know he will pursue this righteously. I will be backing Mace's privilege motion, but I do not trust the Uniparty, and I believe they will try to kill it. This must be exposed. Burchett said, absolutely. Yes, dadgummit. Absolutely. So, yes, I think that ultimately we're going to get this information, but I do believe that it's probably going to be our man Burchett that brings it to us. So keep fighting, Tim. Thank God you're there. And anybody who's currently in Congress, I want them to just get blown up metaphorically with the information of their improprieties. I cannot wait to see that. Got a couple of thank yous. Well, just one, actually. Amy Gherkin, 61. John Solomon referred to us against them as the Patriots and the Hatriots. Okay, that's a good one, too. That's kind of catchy. All right, so moving on to our next subject, also from the State of the Union. As I said yesterday, President Trump brought Americans to the State of the Union. He brought people who have been impacted by the failed policies of the Hatriots, of the deep state monoparty. He brought war heroes. He brought the best examples of America, the best examples of America that need to be paid attention to, the cross-section of this great country and its citizens who should be represented by those people in Congress, but all too often aren't. And the Democrats, they brought illegal aliens. Now, at least one congressman, a Democrat member of Congress, you can see him right here, he brought an illegal alien, and he actually spat in the face of law enforcement by doing this. He did this during the State of the Union speech. He also helped him to evade capture, though. All right, these are crimes, and that has nothing to do with speech and debate. So while President Trump is giving this speech, we have a Democrat member of Congress, Seth Moulton. He's from Massachusetts. He decided to invite a teenage illegal alien named Marcelo Gomez da Silva. Now, Gomez da Silva was detained for several days last May because his student visa expired and he was in the country illegally. Go figure. Now, Moulton was not the only Democrat to invite an illegal. He and his staff went a step further, more than his other colleagues, and he actually hid this illegal alien in his office. Take a look at this.
And he was brought to the State of the Union address last night by his congressman, Democrat Seth Moulton. But Congressman Moulton's chief...
No, he was brought to the State of the Union by the congressman who represents that area of Massachusetts. As an illegal alien, he doesn't have a congressman. He's not a citizen of the United States of America. Just because he's got his ass parked someplace in Massachusetts, that doesn't give him a congressman, doesn't give him a senator, doesn't give him a mayor, doesn't give him a county commissioner, doesn't give him a city councilman. He's just somebody whose body is here in the United States illegally, needs to get the hell out.
Chief of Staff Nisha Suarez noticed this tweet from the Department of Homeland Security during the State of the Union address.
Representative Moulton plans to bring illegal alien Marcelo Gomez da Silva. Gomez da Silva is an illegal alien who has no right to be in our nation. We are committed to enforcing the law and fighting for the arrest, detention, and removal of illegal aliens just like him. Now, it would have been so awesome if they had actually arrested him while he was there, but unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Boston Globe reports Gomez was escorted out of the chamber by Moulton's chief of staff, Nisha Suarez. Suarez, who drove Gomez to Washington, was concerned about the heavy law enforcement presence while the teen was alone in the House gallery without his phone. Gomez watched the rest of the speech in Moulton's office. Democrats on the Homeland Security.
They should have arrested him. They should have arrested him. Now, you remember what happened to the judge in Wisconsin. I mean, she helped an illegal alien to evade capture. They filed charges against her. I hope that they do that to Representative Moulton and to his chief of staff. Now, Ilhan Omar brought a crazed left-wing lunatic, and her name is Aliyah Rahman. She's also claiming that she was forcibly removed from the House chamber during President Trump's speech, and that she actually was arrested, and that she was forced to be hospitalized as a result of her aggressive handling by authorities. Now, she, I guess, was booked at the United States Capitol Police headquarters. Reports indicate she was so-called aggressively handled until someone intervened to secure medical attention. She was taken to George Washington University Hospital for treatment and later booked at the U.S. Capitol Police headquarters. This is Ilhan Omar speaking. The heavy-handed response to a peaceful guest sends a chilling message about the state of our democracy. I am calling for a full explanation of why this arrest occurred. It's none of your business, Ilhan Omar. I mean, why did you bring this woman? Obviously, she must have done something to get her ass kicked out, like Al Green did. So, Rahman actually went on Democracy Now! And claimed she was removed for standing up silently. No buttons, no facial expressions, no gestures, no sign, not one. I don't know that that's the case, but the arrest took place right around the time that President Trump was delivering remarks about illegal aliens, which of course prompted Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, the last standing members of the squad, to heckle President Trump and then voluntarily leave the chamber. You probably remember this woman because I covered her previously. She had driven her car into an intersection and blocked ICE officials, and they were forced to drag her out of her car because she wouldn't get out of the way. If you don't remember, I'll show you the clip. Look at that. She could have just driven over somebody's foot. She's surrounded by ICE agents, and she moves her car, but she doesn't get out of the way. She still is blocking traffic and refusing to comply with a lawful order. So obviously this is not going to end well for her, but I think it's going to be entertaining for us. God darn it. You know, I'm starting to wonder. I got a copyright claim against me by this company called Storyful, and it was for a video of Greg Bavino, or the protest with Greg Bavino where the agents mooned the protesters. And I'm a little gun shy now about showing these videos over on YouTube. So I don't know. I might end up getting banned again from YouTube because if I'm going to have to, they want me to pay $500 a month. Like, I'm sorry, you guys, but I can't afford to pay $500 a month to maybe use videos that people have taken randomly at protests. But anyways, she ended up getting dragged out of the car. She was, of course, arrested at that time. I don't know what her charges were or even if she was charged. But it, of course, it stands right in line with what we'd expect from Ilhan Omar bringing her. All right, now Marco Rubio has also responded to the attack on the American vessel that happened in Cuba yesterday. And we still don't know if these were Americans that were on the ship. We just know that the boat was registered in Florida. Essentially, Marco Rubio said this is an unusual situation, even for Cuba. And we don't really know what's going on, but I don't necessarily just trust what Cuba is telling us.
Listen up, men.
So
ditch the
just
blue
need to
pill.
get past this commercial, and then I will play the clip of Marco commenting on this for you. Okay. Here is, ladies and gentlemen, your Secretary of State.
So this morning, we were made aware by Cuban authorities of an incident off the coast of Cuba. We immediately began to look into it. As it stands now, the Department of Homeland Security, the Coast Guard, others are involved. The majority of the information we still possess is what Cuban authorities are providing both the public and the U.S. government. We have our embassy on the ground in Havana working this as we speak, asking for access to the people that were on those vessels, if they were American citizens or permanent residents. According to the Cuban regime, the boat was registered in Florida. We're tracking.
So, Dr. Uke, I'm still on YouTube because they gave me my channel back. So as long as they are allowing me to have that channel, I'm still going to go ahead and publish all my videos there. But I'm fully aware of the possibility that it may not last for very long. In fact, I'm surprised that it's lasted as long as it has. But ultimately, there is a lot of people who are on YouTube who never came over to Rumble, never came over to Pilled, never came over to X, never came over to Getter, any of those platforms. And I can't tell you how many people were like, wow, Zach, I haven't seen you for 5 years. And I was like, wow, that's insane to me.
Tracking that down. We will know shortly, and we will know quickly, many more facts about this incident than we know right now. The majority of the facts.
There's something wrong with this video. It's not me, I promise you. Anyways, Marco Rubio says basically we need more information. And it's exactly what I said yesterday. All right. Now, Epstein. Here is a picture of Howard Lutnick on Epstein's Island. And it looks like this is probably from the trip that was referenced in that email between Epstein and Howard Lutnick and his wife. Because I think that this is Howard Lutnick's sons right here behind them. I know this is Jeffrey Epstein. This is Howard Lutnick in the blue shirt. And I think this is Jean-Luc Brunel over here on the right. Now, clearly, because we've got, we don't have pictures of, Howard Lutnick doing things with girls or kids or anything like that. But we know that this is Epstein's Island because we've got a couple of points of interest. You got this bench right here. You've got this tree. We can see in the drone shot of Epstein's temple. That's right here. It would appear that the DOJ had removed this picture from the actual archives. It's only available on Jmail, jmail.world, if you want to go take a look through there. But again, like I said recently, I trust President Trump, and there are plausible reasons as to why Howard Lutnick may have been there that day and to this day still be deeply involved in President Trump's second administration. I want to be very clear. I don't think Howard Lutnick is handling President Trump. I don't think anybody is handling President Trump. But I would like to hear more from Howard Lutnick as to why this happened at all. Now, today is the beginning of testimony from Hillary Clinton. And we do have a statement from Chairman Comer. And he said, you know what? I think we're actually going to be having Howard Lutnick come in and we're going to be asking him to testify. That's good. I think that's a good thing. Anytime we can shed some light on what happened or what's going on, that's what we need to do. Now, here is something that I would like to highlight for you. This is an email from the Epstein files. I'm sorry, not an email. It's an iMessage. So these are text messages going back and forth between Jeffrey Epstein and somebody else. And I've always said that it's quite clear to me that the deep state hates Donald Trump. And the moves that Donald Trump is making have been carefully calculated to destroy the deep state's hold on power and return power to we the people. If President Trump was doing the bidding of any foreign power, any evil faction, they wouldn't have tried to kill him on numerous occasions. They wouldn't have tried to destroy him during his first term. They wouldn't have tried to put him in prison and bankrupt him during the shadow term. And they wouldn't be continuing to try today. In this message between Jeffrey Epstein and a redacted sender, it says the establishment hates Trump. This is August 24th of 2018. And the second message says the good news is they are getting him by getting him to resign by finding illegality rather than doing what they did to JFK. Okay? Meaning, obviously, the same people who killed JFK were the same people who were trying to get rid of Donald Trump. By the time his third political campaign came around, they had made the decision that they were going to try to do to him what they did to JFK. So if President Trump was doing anything other than working for us, they never would have tried to do all these things to get rid of him up until this point. And I think that that is extremely, extremely important. Now, also, again, under President Trump and his current Department of Justice, all of these things are coming out about Epstein, his associates, and the people who were close to him. Bill Gates has now apologized to his staff at his foundation. He's admitted that the email that Jeffrey Epstein sent himself about Bill Gates getting the clap or some other type of sexually transmitted disease from Russian hookers, it actually happened. He says he admits to having affairs with 2 Russian women. This is undoubtedly what led to the implosion of Bill Gates' marriage to Melinda Gates. It turns out Bill Gates has made this mea culpa in front of the staff at his foundation explicitly as a result of it coming out in the Epstein files. He only went as far as admitting to having affairs with Russian women, but it's very clear that he was compromised. Patty Ninefinger says, why is anyone redacted? I guess this was a conversation between victims. No, not necessarily, but if there is a lot of people who are in these files who did nothing wrong, and simply the presence of having them released as part of it, it damages their reputation. And I fully understand that. I don't think necessarily that we need to have the names of every person who ever came into contact with Jeffrey Epstein. But the reason it's important for us to have answers on Howard Lutnick is because he's playing such an integral part of this administration. I think that President Trump knew the people who were going to be in there. The same with Elon Musk. He knew he was going to be in there. I think Steve Bannon obviously knew he was going to be in there. But simply being in there does not mean that you did something wrong. I mean, it's a bit like there are so many people out there who are sharing things that are in these files and presenting them as if they are damning and proof of some illegal behavior. But it's a bit like Jeffrey Epstein saying that he's going to go to Chick-fil-A, and then somebody puts out the email of him talking about how much he loves Chick-fil-A. And then they say, Chick-fil-A mentioned the Epstein files. I knew that they were trafficking children. That's not what it means. There is nuance to this. I'll go back to what I said previously. There's many different reasons that I can imagine why that particular meeting would have happened with Howard Lutnick, his wife, and their kids. Okay. I do not believe that they went there so that Jeffrey Epstein could rape their kids. I don't believe that. But I think that Howard Lutnick, if this is a long play, then perhaps he, Elon Musk, other people that were around, maybe they were looking to see what they could find out about Jeffrey Epstein, having heard these terrible things about him. Obviously not having the knowledge that at some point in the future this is going to come out. To be frank, people tend to lie when they want to protect their own reputation. But it doesn't mean that they did anything wrong. It just means that they don't even want to deal with the possible repercussions or having to explain it. But now that it's out, I think that Howard is probably going to have to explain it. There are also people who are mentioned in these files. Somebody had Tom Hanks's name came up, not because he had gone to Jeffrey Epstein's island. And this is not to say that I don't think that there are probably questions that need to be answered about Tom Hanks, obviously. But the way that he was mentioned, it was like somebody was just talking about Tom Hanks. And then somebody puts that email out and says, Tom Hanks now mentioned the Epstein files. I told you, but you can't tell anything from that. There's just, there's a lot of nuance, and there are specific contexts in which people may be mentioned in these files, but it doesn't mean that they had anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein's network. There is plenty of information about that. All right, so continuing right here. We already know, over the years, it's been widely reported, Bill Gates had a deep and long-lasting relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. This is definitely one of those people that I think we can look at and say, there's no plausible way that due to the way that Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates' lives were entangled, that Bill Gates was not, at a minimum, using Jeffrey Epstein's network to gain access to girls and women. Certainly, going to the island, being involved with him on a monetary level, all of that is, in my opinion, certainly the implication of bad behavior happening. Patty Ninefinger says, I get that, but they aren't taking anything serious. I think it just leaves doubts in the people's minds that we don't need. How do you know they're not taking anything serious, Patty? I mean, when the Epstein stuff was first asked for, there was a subset of information that they knew about. And as they started to go through and see, what needed to be redacted, they found more. They found it hidden away at the FBI. They found it hidden away at the DOJ. Then they found more at the SDNY. Then they found more someplace else. I think that they are taking it seriously. And we're talking about millions upon millions of documents. Then we find that Jeffrey Epstein had these secret stashes of tapes and video footage and pictures that were at different storage units. That's also something new. So I think that investigations, if they're going to be done correctly, they take time. They also take manpower, and they take, planning and energy. So you're looking at all of the same emails that I am. And although there is the implication of things having taken place, there's very little to prove simply based upon the words in the email that a crime did take place. In order to get to that point, you've got to go through those investigations. Now, a large part of that, I think, is going to be the suspicious activity reports and following the money all the way that it goes. And of course, we're talking about many years having elapsed since that time. You've also got very real consequences that are befalling people all around the world as a result of this. So I think just because you haven't seen somebody getting indicted for something, even though I reported this last week, but that woman, the Emirati, who was talking to Jeffrey Epstein about basically pimping her sister out to him, the U.S. did put out an indictment request for her to be arrested. That just hasn't happened yet. So I think just because you haven't seen something that you believe you should have seen by this point doesn't mean that it isn't being taken seriously. You know, the Department of Justice is a large organization, and at the same time that you've got this group within the DOJ and the FBI that are focusing on Epstein stuff, I mean, think about how many other fucking problems they are also dealing with, like all around the country. It's a staggering amount of criminality, and pardon my language, but it's a staggering amount of criminality. And we are seeing many other areas where people are being indicted. And I realize for many people, the idea of the Epstein network, that's the most important thing. But I think we're going to get there. I just think that because we haven't seen it yet doesn't mean that it isn't being taken seriously. All right. Real quick, before we continue with this, I do have a very quick message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, if you have not yet tried 1775 coffee, I want to give you the opportunity to do so. It truly is great coffee. They've got some of those starter kits available. In those starter kits, you're going to get their bold dark roast, their smooth medium roast, and that Vitality mushroom coffee that gives you clean energy and laser focus without the crash. It's all made from the highest quality beans you can get, single origin, small batch, toxin, and mold-free. You're also going to get some free goodies, the gold spoon clip, the very strong frother, and the black 1775 tumbler. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's all yours for $99. This is going to be for the people who have simply been watching 1775, people talking about it, and wondering if it's actually worth trying. It truly is, and to find out, you got to go to 1775coffee.com/studio and then grab one of those starter kits before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. You can use that QR code on screen as well. It is delicious coffee. You guys are not going to regret it. All right, you guys, continuing. Yes, and then here's the other part, too. Is that, and I think that we can take this as a lesson from what just happened at the FBI. These organizations are vast, and we are dealing with decades of entrenched criminality within the federal bureaucracy. You know, one thing that I've tried to highlight very importantly is President Trump's efforts to clean up the federal bureaucracy. The fact that we've gotten rid of 300,000 unelected bureaucrats. Those are probably 100% deep state patriots working in the federal government, working against the America First agenda, working against President Trump. Those people are gone. Their positions are not going to be filled. But you know, in no way should anybody think that that's all that we have to deal with. There are a lot more people currently working within all of these different areas of the federal government who hate America just as much as those people who are gone. And each and every one of those people, it's like you're sticking a pencil or a knife in your transmission while you're driving down the road. You know, maybe the gears are going to continue to turn, but now you've got metal shavings and you've got foreign debris that's inside that transmission. And so it's not going to go as fast. They have a tremendous amount of influence to essentially make it so that things are not happening as fast as we would like them to go. And so there is this ongoing effort to root those people out, to get rid of them, and then to try to continue to do this stuff as much as we can, as fast as we can. And I just think that it's a much bigger job than people realize, and there is a lot more resistance than what you would even think was possible. So, you know, there is a lot taking place. That's ultimately my point. And it's a big job to get rid of these people. Get them out of there. There you go, Buck Wayne, like pushing a car up a hill with flat tires. Miller Biz, good to see you, hon. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. All right. So now Bill Gates is going to be telling people that he's sorry. I mean, what else can he say? He got caught with his pants down. He got caught with his hand in the penicillin jar. He got caught giving that penicillin to Melinda. And now that he's admitted to 2 affairs with Russian women, he says women, I would say Russian prostitutes or Russian trafficking victims, while married to Melinda French Gates. He's now apologizing to everybody, anybody who will listen, apologizing to his charity. And he still maintains that he did nothing illicit. I did nothing illicit. I saw nothing illicit. And that's it. Yeah. Bill answered questions submitted by Foundation staff on a range of issues, including the Epstein files, the work they're doing on AI, the foundation of global health. And yeah, there you go. He contracted a sexually transmitted disease as a result of having sex with, quote, Russian girls. And he asked Jeffrey Epstein for covert antibiotics so he could give it to his wife. Yeah, absolutely awful. All right, now, also, fallout from the Epstein files. Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary for Bill Clinton. He had already had to bow out of a number of different things, but now he is fully severing ties with his alma mater, Harvard University. So since last November, a lot of people have been talking about Larry Summers because he's all over the Epstein files. And so he had to stop teaching classes. He was supposedly taking a sabbatical. He had to walk away from a couple of boards, but now he is fully retiring and he is no longer going to be affiliated with Harvard at all. He also has left a couple of other places too, but he said, I've made the difficult decision to retire from Harvard, from my Harvard professorship at the end of this academic year. I will always be grateful to the thousands of students and colleagues I've been privileged to teach and work with since coming to Harvard as a graduate student 50 years ago. He added that, free of formal responsibility as president emeritus and a retired professor, I look forward in time to engaging in research, analysis, and commentary on a range of global economic issues. Nobody's going to want to work with... Hold on. Somebody says I'm frozen. Oh, no. Hold on. I guess I'll wait a second. Why? Let me see if I can go to a different network. See if that's going to make a difference. Okay. So I just turned off my Wi-Fi so that I'm just using the hard line of the fiber. And that doesn't seem to be doing anything at all. Good God. How is this possible? I have really good internet 99% of the time. All right, so you guys are saying you can still hear the audio. Okay, it looks like it's clearing up. I think that we just had some... Oh, no, now it's going shit again. All right, well, maybe now it's working. All right. Yeah, no, honey, I can see it. I definitely see that it's not working right. I can tell looking in the window. Also, Borg Brenda, the president of the World Economic Forum, has also just resigned. It's funny because Mr. Brenda took over from, of course, Klaus Schwab, who was also forced to resign over his own claims of potential misconduct. Borg Brenda, in the files, was shown to have had 3 dinners with Epstein, 2018, 2019, just before he was arrested. And he also had a bunch of very friendly text messages. Yeah, I saw, babe. Yeah, I think it was everywhere it was going to be looking like shit. In these text messages, he described Jeffrey Epstein as a brilliant host. He also said that he was missing Jeffrey Epstein, and he also emailed him and invited him to Davos to come hang out. Now, again, there are no crimes that we can point to with Mr. Brenda, but Jeffrey Epstein, at this point, was a convicted sex offender. Now, another very important thing to point out is that a lot of these people... It's not surprising to me that they would hang out with Jeffrey Epstein because Jeffrey Epstein had money and he used that money to make connections. And then once he inserted himself into somebody's life, if he compromised them, he was never going to let them go. Even very, very applicable with Bill Gates. Bill Gates apparently tried to separate himself from Jeffrey Epstein, and Jeffrey Epstein made it very, very clear that he was never going to be rid of him. Something else was going to have to happen if Bill Gates didn't want to hang out with Jeffrey Epstein anymore. HMed1 says, love all you do, Zach and Lisa. Thank you for all you do. Thank you very much for the $50 rant. I appreciate that. Very generous of you. Thank you so much. All right. Now, there is also going to be a WEF internal probe, or I guess there was a WEF internal probe, and this is one of the reasons he's walking away. But it's just another example of a global elite bureaucrat that has been pushed out of their position so that, or because of their affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein, however that might be. Now, again, just one more time to harp on the Howard Lutnick stuff. If Howard Lutnick had done something that we should be concerned about, other than perhaps, you know, the poor judgment without having any sort of additional context or explanation, I think that President Trump would not allow him to be such an important part of the administration. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I fall back on the idea that President Trump has far more information than we do. And as such, his judgment is going to be sound on this stuff. All right. Now, we are actually going to watch the entirety of this opening statement here. This is a press conference from this morning before Hillary Clinton came in to give her deposition. She released the entirety of her statement. We will be reading that in just a moment. But the Republicans and members of the Oversight Committee gave a press conference to discuss the fact that Hillary was there and likely everything they were hoping to learn. So let's go ahead and pull this up.
Certain documents. Then the motion was amended by Scott Perry to include subpoenas for various names. I think there were 8 names originally, including Clinton. Everyone that was included in that subpoena has already either been interviewed by the Oversight Committee or sent in a statement that they had never met Epstein and had no knowledge of the investigation, except the Clintons. We worked for 6 months to get the Clintons to come in, and then they acted like they were going to come in, and then they didn't show up. And obviously we moved to hold the Clintons in contempt. And I think one thing that surprised the Clintons, they assumed the Democrats on the committee would vote in a partisan manner and not vote to hold the Clintons in contempt. And what they learned was a majority of the Democrats on the committee either voted to hold the Clintons in contempt or voted present. And I think that's a statement that this investigation is serious. It is a bipartisan investigation. The American people have a lot of questions. To my knowledge, the Clintons haven't answered very many, if any, questions about their knowledge or involvement with.
This is what's important about the Clintons coming in to testify. They have never addressed this stuff, other than perhaps the briefest of dismissals being asked about it over the years. Usually just brushed away, going on with their business. But the questions that will be asked of the Clintons today are undoubtedly going to require them to perjure themselves, or it's going to require them to invoke the Fifth Amendment. And those are the things that I am most interested in. But never discount the intellectual impact of having these things publicized and brought to the American people. Riffic, I see you over there. You said you've been listening to, for 10 years, these investigations. Bro, I remember in the early 80s watching the Iran-Contra hearings. I was born in 1978, okay? So I've been watching hearings and these investigations for my entire life, okay? So I am right there with you. Generally speaking, the investigations don't move the needle on criminal prosecutions. However, we're at a very different moment in history when it comes to this particular type of crime, okay? A vast majority of the American people now understand exactly how corrupt these people are, exactly what they've been doing, and the knowledge that Bill and Hillary Clinton were friendly with this guy for so many years that Bill Clinton invited him into the White House 17 times. I mean, these pieces of information being brought to the American public need to be done for the purposes of disclosure. More than anything, having all of this released, it's my ultimate hope that it will end up leading to real investigations that give us criminal prosecutions. But again, it takes time to get to that point. Now, we'll see what the DOJ does. We'll see what the FBI does. I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not having these conversations. But if they didn't follow these leads where they need to go so that people can be investigated, then, of course, people are going to be even more disillusioned with the American experiment. And it's not going to be enough that people are making more money. It's not going to be enough that you pay less in taxes. I mean, we're still paying taxes, or many people are, not everybody. So, yeah, this is not perfect. Never going to be a perfect world. But I think that we are moving closer to it than we have at any point in history. I'll be perfectly frank with you. I mean, having paid attention to these things for that long, I've told this story many times, but like by the time Obama rolled around, I was completely blackpilled. I never thought anything was going to move the needle. And Donald Trump, even being elected, I wasn't sure if that was going to be possible. I didn't really believe it until like the day of. And I was like, holy shit, I think we're actually going to do it. And now here we are. He has gone through the gauntlet. He's returned. And we have had more disclosure in the 14 months that he's been president than we have at any other time in history. So I see that needle moving. All right. And I am confident that we are going to be able to get justice for those who have not received it in years past. So it's just, again, a matter of waiting. But I'm seeing so much more movement than I've ever seen in my entire life.
Epstein and Maxwell, again, no one's accusing at this moment the Clintons of any wrongdoing. They're going to have due process. But we have a lot of questions. And the purpose of the whole investigation is to try to understand many things about Epstein. How did he accumulate so much wealth? How was he able to surround himself with some of the most powerful men in the world? Was he an asset for our government or any other government? These are the questions that we're going to ask over the next 2 days, and hopefully we'll be able to get some answers. And as always, we're going to release the transcripts. We're going to release the video as soon as everyone has approved it. The normal process in a deposition is the attorneys would have the opportunity to review the transcript and review the video to make sure that there are no errors. And this is going to be a long video because this is going to be a long deposition. Today will be a long deposition, I would assume, and tomorrow will be an even longer deposition. Every member of the Oversight Committee is going to have questions for the Clintons, as well as our trained staff that do nothing but deposition. So after our hour of questioning, we're going to send a couple of members of the Oversight Committee out to be able to give you an update of what's going on and answer some questions. So with that, we'll answer a question or two, and then we'll go back to the
Mr. Comer, are you concerned that there has been a cover-up of sexual abuse of a minor by President Trump? There are missing FBI records that appear to be.
No, we're looking into the accusation by the NPR. We don't know the answer to that. We know what the administration says. We're still looking to
No, there is nothing to those supposed claims of President Trump having molested somebody. The claims that NPR and the New York Times wrote about this last week, I didn't bother to talk about them because I've already talked about them and explained what we saw there. They were claims that were originated with Lisa Bloom. She had already been caught paying people to make fake claims against President Trump. There was the Katie Johnson, who was, that's a nom de plume. She didn't want to bring her real name because she was lying. She brought the charges and filed a suit, and then she dropped it because it was total bullshit. Any of the other supposed claims against President Trump came from that hotline that they had set up, and there wasn't a single one that was determined to have any veracity at all, because either the stories didn't line up with history and where President Trump was and what he was doing in his life, or they mentioned things that didn't exist on the timeline, or the people just did not want to talk to the authorities because they knew that they were lying. So there's nothing there.
Get a definitive answer on that. But look, let's just be realistic here. If you go by a lot of what the Democrats have said, you had Jasmine Crockett accused Lee Zeldin of taking donations from Jeffrey Epstein. It was the wrong Jeffrey Epstein. We've had Ro Khanna sit on the floor and name names of people that he thought were involved in Epstein that weren't even involved. So, sometimes the Democrats on the committee aren't the best. Go ahead, Chad.
What about the idea, though, that I understand you say that this is different with some of the members or some of the people who were subpoenaed who didn't have a direct contact. But some folks have said it seems like the Clintons are basically on trial here versus people who know more about the what was going on with Maxwell, what was going on with Epstein, and that this is really kind of dragging them through the mud when there are other witnesses.
Well, let's address that, Chad. The Democrats voted to subpoena the Clintons. The Democrats voted with the Republicans to hold the Clintons in contempt. So the Democrats have just as many questions for the Clintons as the Republicans. So this isn't a partisan witch hunt. This was a motion, a bipartisan motion supported by the Democrats to bring the Clintons in. So I don't think it's any type of being unfair in any way to the Clintons. They've never answered questions, unlike President Trump, who gets questioned every day by just about every one of you about his knowledge or involvement with Epstein. To my knowledge, the Clintons haven't answered very many questions about it.
The Clintons have never answered any questions about damn near anything. The Clintons have a cloud of suspicion that surrounds them because, obviously, you've got bodies that follow them. You've got political scandals that they've always been able to avoid accountability for because of their power and their position. This is probably the best chance we have of getting them on the record for many of these subjects. And what Chairman Comer mentioned there at the very beginning, of course, these are questions that we need to ask them. But again, I don't anticipate the Clintons to divulge anything that's going to get them in trouble. If anything, this is going to reinforce for people, especially when we get the video of this, just how scummy these people are. And Hillary is testifying today. Bill Clinton testifies tomorrow.
One more question.
Chair, with the spirit of bipartisanship, would you then ask the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to come testify? It seems like he has some information.
That's very possible, and I think I think it's a good possibility that his name will arise in some questioning today.
It'll be on my list, and I have an email I printed off for Hillary to ask about Howard Lutnick today. So
Guys, watch it.
We're asking again, and I want to remind everyone: we've already brought in Alex Acosta and Bill Barr for deposition. That's two Republicans in the Trump administration. So this isn't just about Democrats. This is about anyone that has any knowledge of Epstein, the investigation. I think we all agree the government failed. The government failed the victims.
Numerous administrations failed over and over and over again. And the reason they failed those victims is because Jeffrey Epstein had a cozy relationship as an asset or as an agent for a variety of different intelligence services, not simply here in the United States, but also abroad. Ultimately, I think Jeffrey Epstein was a free agent. I think that Epstein was a broker of information. He had the blackmail, and he would sell that to the highest bidder of whatever nation he wanted to work with at any time. And that means that ultimately he would be working with or for U.S. interests at the same time he's working for Israeli interests, or he's working for Saudi interests. Doesn't matter. I mean, the man knew no allegiances, all right? His ultimate goal, in my opinion, was to satiate his own sick desires while at the same time using those desires to entrap, blackmail, and then use those relationships to continue his ascent to power and his ability to collect money and position.
And what our role is, we can't prosecute anyone, but what we have been doing is getting transparency to the American people. We subpoenaed the estate. That had nothing to do with the discharge petition. We subpoenaed the documents for the estate. That's what the victims asked us to do. And what you're seeing is there is accountability finally happening. You've seen at least a dozen very powerful people, men and women, who have already resigned, many in disgrace from their board positions. So we're seeing accountability, but we have a desire to see a lot more accountability. We want to get the answers, and hopefully the next 2 days will be a step in the right direction on our investigation.
Now, what many people might say is that, well, Congress doesn't have the ability to indict. So what does this do? The evidence that Congress is able to gather from the questioning of people associated with Jeffrey Epstein, if they are able to establish crimes, they then make a criminal referral to the Department of Justice, and it would be the responsibility of the Department of Justice to then use that information to file charges. Of course, it has to go through a grand jury, which is very unfortunate if the crimes occurred in the District of Columbia, because I have zero confidence in the ability of this Justice Department to be able to indict anyone in Washington, D.C. That's not just because they hate President Trump, but I think that you have a lot of pedos and a lot of commies who live in D.C. And so those people are going to protect the people that are just like them.
One more and then
Well, that being said, I mean, Hillary Clinton has said she has no links to Jeffrey Epstein. She doesn't recall meeting him. So what specific information do you believe she has that warrants her testimony?
Well, you'll see. I mean, we're going to ask a lot of questions, but with respect to when you look at all the co-conspirators, and we've all seen the unredacted documents, Maxwell is the main co-conspirator. No one brought more women in and lied to more women about what was going to happen with their involvement with Jeffrey Epstein than Ghislaine Maxwell. We know that obviously Maxwell was a guest at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. There weren't many people that went to that wedding, so again, we're not accusing Hillary Clinton of wrongdoing. We know that Jeffrey Epstein said many times in emails that he was the first person to raise money for the Clinton Initiative, the Clinton...
Yeah, he was the co-founder of the Clinton Global Initiative, or the Clinton Foundation. I don't remember exactly what it was in terms of its corporate structure when it started off, but he was there on the founding documents. And as we all know, he visited the White House 17 times at least.
Foundation that he solicited money at some of his properties for the Clinton Foundation. Again, that's not saying anything's illegal, but there are a lot of questions pertaining to Secretary Clinton with respect to Epstein and his involvement in the Clinton Initiative and her relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. So we'll come out every hour when we get finished.
All right, so I just saw someone in the chat say, no, Comer, resignation is not accountability. So I like to think about accountability as a ladder of sorts. All right. What is most important to these people? It's their reputation. It's the money they get and the power they receive from the positions they have. So yes, in my view, resignations are a form of accountability. Is it the ultimate accountability? No, but certainly it's on the scale of accountability. The real accountability is for people who have committed crimes to have that demonstrated so that they can be indicted and then have trials held. That's ultimately it. But until that is proven, we can't ask for that to happen. We can ask for the necessary investigations. We can ask for the DOJ and the FBI to exhaust every resource they have to determine whether or not people within the orbit of Jeffrey Epstein are guilty or suspected of these crimes so that we can prove them guilty in a court of law. But until such time, I think that I am more than happy to accept people being forced to resign over the disgrace of being associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Because if they had nothing to hide, then they would have no need to resign. If they were good people, they wouldn't have been hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein and continuing to associate with him, despite the fact that he was a registered sex offender in multiple states. So it's a signal that there is something else there that, in my opinion, must be dug into deeper. So these people resign. When they resign from a board, they no longer get paid by that board. They now have a black spot on their name. They are now blacklisted among their previous social groups. They are persona non grata. They are no longer free to walk down the street. So, yes, I do think that that is a level of accountability when you're looking at everything that could potentially happen to them. Now, there is an email that I wanted to show you guys, and I think I have it here. If I don't, then I can just quote it. Yeah, I'm just going to have to quote it. But someone emailed Jeffrey Epstein during the 2016 presidential run, and they said, I know you're close with Hillary Clinton, but if she gets the nomination and you vote for her, I might have to kill you. I think that they were probably being tongue-in-cheek. But again, it points to the fact that there is many different connections to Hillary Clinton and Epstein. Well, the Clintons and Epstein. Now, this is Hillary Clinton's statement that she released this morning before heading into her deposition, which again was under oath. So she says, Mr. Chairman, ranking member, members of the committee, as a former senator, I have respect for legislative oversight, and I expect its exercise, as do the American people, to be principled and fearless in pursuit of truth and accountability. As we all know, however, too often congressional investigations are partisan political theater, which is an abdication of duty and an insult to the American people. Again, this was a bipartisan subpoena. The committee justified its subpoena to me on its assumption that I have information regarding the investigations into the criminal activities of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me be as clear as I can. I do not. As I stated in my sworn declaration on January 13th, I had no idea about their criminal activities. Maybe they can ask her about Laura Silsby and the kids that were nearly stolen from Haiti. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his island, homes, or offices. But she was present when he visited the White House, if I'm not mistaken. I have nothing to add to that. Like every decent person, I have been horrified by what we have learned about their crimes. It's unfathomable that Mr. Epstein initially got a slap on the wrist in 2008, which allowed him to continue his predatory practices for another decade. Mr. Chairman, your investigation is supposed to be assessing the federal government's handling of the investigations and prosecutions of Epstein and his crimes. You subpoenaed 8 law enforcement officials, all of whom ran the Department of Justice or directed the FBI when Epstein's crimes were investigated and prosecuted. Of those 8, only 1 appeared before the committee. 5 of the 6 former attorneys general were allowed to submit brief statements stating they had no information to provide. You have held out, or you know what they should ask her about when she was Secretary of State and she actively helped to cover up the scandal of ambassadors in Europe who were procuring children for their own sick pleasures. Hillary Clinton was in charge at that time, and everybody just kind of forgot about it. You have held 0 public hearings, and that is so disingenuous. It's a closed-door hearing, but then the footage is released to the public. The only thing that an open hearing forgoes is the circus-like atmosphere that we see every single time, which, of course, reduces the number of questions that well-intentioned members are able to ask. Including today, despite espousing the need for transparency on dozens of occasions. Again, this will be released to the public. We will have this video tomorrow. You have made little effort to call the people who show up most prominently in the Epstein files. I don't know if that's true. And when you did, not a single Republican member showed up for Les Wexner's deposition. That is true, and that really pissed me off. I couldn't believe it. Even Comer wasn't there. He had a dentist appointment or something. Why was nobody there for Les Wexner's deposition? That just boggles my mind. These people get paid way too much to do way too little. This institutional failure is designed to protect one political party and one public office. No, it's not. Rather than to seek truth and justice for the victims and survivors, as well as the public who also want to get to the bottom of this matter. My heart breaks for the survivors, and I am furious on their behalf. Oh, my God. What about all of the women that your husband raped over the years? I have spent my life advocating for women and girls. Really? I have worked hard to stop the terrible abuses so many women and girls face here and around the world, including human trafficking, forced labor, and sexual slavery. I hope somebody asks her about Juanita Broaddrick. For too long, these have been largely invisible crimes or not treated as crimes at all. But the survivors are real, and they are entitled to better. In Southeast Asia, I met girls as young as 12 years old who were forced into prostitution and raped repeatedly. Some were dying of AIDS. In Eastern Europe, I met mothers who told me how they lost their daughters to trafficking and did not know where to turn. In settings around the world, I met survivors trying to rebuild their lives and help rescue others with little support from people in power who too often turned a blind eye and a cold shoulder. She ain't wrong, but she's also not blameless. If you are new to this issue, let me tell you, Jeffrey Epstein was a heinous individual, but he's far from alone. There is not a one-off tabloid. This is not a one-off tabloid sensation or a political scandal. It's a global scourge with an unimaginable human toll. Remember when they told us that this was conspiracy theory, that a global child trafficking network didn't exist? Now we've got Hillary Clinton. We've got Hillary Clinton going on the record to say that we were actually correct this entire time. I mean, you can't tell me that the impact of that isn't measurable. My work combating sex trafficking goes back to my days as First Lady. It all started back in Arkansas, didn't it? I worked to pass the first federal legislation against trafficking and was proud that my husband signed the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which increased support for survivors and gave prosecutors better tools for going after traffickers. As Secretary of State, I appointed a former federal prosecutor, Lou Sabaka, to ramp up our global anti-trafficking efforts. I oversaw nearly 170 anti-trafficking programs in 70 nations and directly pressed foreign leaders to crack down on trafficking networks in their countries. Now, also keep in mind that as Secretary of State, again, during Hillary Clinton's tenure, there were active trafficking networks connected directly to U.S. government sources that were being covered up. Destruction of Libya opened up a brand new slave and trafficking market. Hillary Clinton has been connected to countless examples of this happening around the world. Of course, we have everything here at home as well. So when you're in a position like Hillary Clinton here, what better way to cover up the crimes that you yourself may be involved in than to perhaps have a little bit of cover of appearing as if you are attempting to address these very issues. That's the only reason in my mind that Hillary Clinton was ever involved in anything resembling fighting trafficking. She says, every year we published a global report to shine a light on abuses. Of course, nothing was ever done. Nothing ever stopped. NGOs continued to receive money. War zones continued around the world, and trafficking networks only were solidified. The findings of those reports triggered sanctions on countries failing to make progress, so they became a powerful diplomatic tool to drive concrete action. I insisted that the United States be included in the report for the first time ever in 2011 because we must hold ourselves not just to the same standard as the rest of the world, but to an even higher one. Sex trafficking and modern slavery should have no place in America, none. Well, then you probably want to talk to your old friend Joseph Robinette Biden, because under his tenure, during 4 years, we had 450,000 children come into the United States as unaccompanied minors and then just go missing. Of course, the administration of Donald Trump this second time around has found at least 150,000 of them, but that leaves another 300,000 who are still unaccounted for. I insisted... sex trafficking and modern slavery has no place in America. Infuriatingly, the Trump administration gutted the Trafficking in Persons office at the State Department because the State Department and this office was not doing the job that they were being paid to do. This is not about stopping the enforcement of trafficking. Everybody who has a brain cell knows that. This is about shutting down that unelected bureaucratic deep state within the federal government of the United States. Of course, the State Department is the sister agency, the public-facing branch of the Central Intelligence Agency, and much of these illegal activities took place as a sort of function of the CIA. The child trafficking, the gun running, the drug trafficking, all of it feeds the black budget programs that the Central Intelligence Agency and other covert intelligence agencies run at the same time that they look you in the eyes and say, well, guess what? We are fighting these things. Continuing, she says, the annual cutting more than 70% of the career civil and foreign service experts because they were deep state who worked so hard to prevent trafficking crimes. But they didn't do it, did they? The annual trafficking report required by law was delayed for months. The message from the administration to the American people in the world could not be clearer. Combating human trafficking is no longer an American priority under the Trump White House. Oh, she's good. She's good. What a harpy. That is a tragedy. It's a scandal. It deserves vigorous investigation and oversight. A committee endeavoring to stopping human trafficking would seek to understand what specific steps are needed to fix a system that allowed Epstein to get away with his crimes in 2008. That's actually what President Trump has been doing, because all of these NGOs, the money that was flowing from the United States coffers into these groups, those are the ones who are committing these acts. They are the ones who are tied directly into the networks like Jeffrey Epstein's. And by getting rid of all of these unelected bureaucrats who are doing these things under the cover of the United States government, it makes it much, much harder for them to continue doing this. She says a committee run by elected officials with a commitment to transparency would ensure the full release of all the files. That's already being done. It would ensure that the lawful redactions of those files protected the victims and survivors. That's already been done. It would get to the bottom of reports the DOJ withheld FBI interviews in which a survivor accuses President Trump of heinous crimes. That's obviously being addressed. It would subpoena anyone who asked on which night there would be the wildest party on Epstein Island. That's also Elon Musk, and he's already come out and spoken about it openly. It would demand testimony from prosecutors in Florida and New York about why they gave Epstein a sweetheart deal and chose not to pursue others who may have been implicated. And, of course, we already know it's because Epstein was associated with intelligence. That was CIA here at home and Mossad abroad and others. It would demand that Secretary Rubio and Attorney General Bondi testify about why this administration is abandoning survivors and playing into the hands of traffickers. Obviously, they're not. It would seek out officers on the front line of this fight and ask them what support they need. It would put forth legislation to provide more resources and force this administration to act. They already are, but she says that's not happening. Instead, you have compelled me to testify because she's the victim, guys. We can't ask Hillary Clinton any questions because she says she's innocent. Fully aware that I have no knowledge that would assist your investigation in order to distract attention from Trump's actions and to cover them up despite legitimate calls for answers. I would say that people have been asking for answers from Hillary Clinton for many decades. And now, finally, she has been caught in this bear trap and she is being forced to answer questions for the very first time. I cannot wait to watch this deposition. If the committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, it would not only rely on press gaggles to get answers from our current presidents on his involvement, it would ask him directly under oath about the tens of thousands of times he showed up in the Epstein files. And she's such a disingenuous harpy. Again, this is like Jeffrey Epstein going to Chick-fil-A and leaving a receipt in his emails and then saying, oh my God, we got to question Chick-fil-A. President Trump is mentioned so many times in the Epstein files because 9 times out of 10, they're talking about how much they hate him. Actually, 10 times out of 10, there's nothing inappropriate that is President Trump affiliated in those files. And she says, what is being held back? Who is being protected? Why the cover-up? Those are questions I think all of us want to know. We want to see people being arrested because it has been proven that they have committed illegal acts. Jeffrey Epstein is not the only person to have trafficked children with Ghislaine Maxwell. My challenge to you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, is the same challenge I put to myself throughout my long service to this nation. No, the challenge that Hillary Clinton put to herself was how much money can I suck out of this system? How to be worthy of the trust of the American people have given you. Never happened with her. They expect statesmanship, not gamesmanship. No, actually, I've had enough with statesmanship. This is, again, the reason that I initially supported President Trump back in 2015. I didn't want to vote for another politician. I didn't believe that a politician had the answers on what needed to be addressed in this failing nation. I knew that the only way that we could get those things was to bring in somebody who was an outsider, and that was President Trump. Statesmen, they do not deliver. They deliver speeches, they deliver carefully worded statements like this, but very rarely do they deliver policy or results that will do anything to move the needle at all. She says, in conclusion, they expect you to use your power to get to the truth and to do more to help survivors of Epstein's crimes, as well as the millions more who are victims of trafficking. I also believe that now that some of these so-called survivors and victims have been revealed as co-conspirators, they do not have the luxury of the non-prosecution agreement that Nadia Marcinko and all of the others had down in Florida, Leslie Groff. So I would like to see them be indicted as well, along with all of these other people that they brought these girls to. All right, now, shortly after the deposition began, Benny Johnson shared this picture. It was taken by Lauren Boebert in the this deposition will show nothing but a clown show. Well, I mean, you're assuming that. But again, it depends on what Hillary Clinton is asked. And all of these things that Chairman Comer suggested are likely going to require her, as I said, to either lie or to invoke the Fifth Amendment. It depends on what it is. I do, however, think that we are going to get some really interesting answers from her out of there. Wounds Are Us said, Hillary said she could take Washington down with her. Sounds like she may be good for her threat. She very well may be. And ultimately, Shreve, at the end of the day, this is not something that Hillary Clinton has ever been challenged on. They are going to have 8 hours to ask her questions about things she doesn't want to answer. And Hillary Clinton is also older. She is not one to control her emotions. So I think that it is highly likely that we're going to get some interesting stuff out of this. Do I think necessarily that this is going to lead to Hillary Clinton being indicted? No, probably not. Because, again, she's either going to lie or she's going to invoke the Fifth Amendment. But I think that there is still value in having her and her husband question. I think it's probably going to be more valuable to have Bill Clinton question because he spent so much more time with Jeffrey Epstein. I would imagine the focus of the questions that will be asked of Hillary Clinton will be more closely aligned to her relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, because Ghislaine Maxwell was right there at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. You don't just invite somebody you don't know to the wedding of your daughter. So Benny Johnson shared this picture. It was taken by Lauren Boebert. The deposition was shut down momentarily because this was an unauthorized picture.
I don't actually see that. Can you explain what the picture is? If you look on your Twitter feed, you know who it came from? It came from Benny Johnson. He said Lauren Boebert gave it. Yeah, look at Benny Johnson's feed. Good. We'll be back. Thanks. Sure.
All right. Now, of course, we don't have any clips of what's happened yet because it hasn't been released, but tomorrow it will be. Now, here is Anna Paulina Luna discussing earlier about the recent documents that have been released, but more importantly, FBI whistleblowers coming forth to talk about what isn't in the files because evidence was destroyed under past administrations. This could also potentially lead us down an interesting line of inquiry because if there are people, and we know there are, who covered up for anybody, I would imagine that people covered up for the Clintons, and I want those people to be exposed, and I want that information to be brought to the surface. Who cares? Drops some shades and says, good evening, Zach and Mrs. Zach. Thank you for that. And Pkwy, thank you for the cookie. Okay.
You've seen who do not have access to the files, how can they be confident that the Attorney General, Bondi, leading this charge or...
Hold on, King Rat, zero value. You don't think that having Hillary Clinton under oath lying or invoking the Fifth Amendment in regard to questions about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine, you don't think that there's any value to that? Like, honestly, there's nothing that could be asked of Hillary Clinton that might be of some utility? I don't understand how that could be possible.
Or others who are in charge of providing documents, that they really will do so in the interest of justice.
Well, I think that, for starters, you have a bipartisan oversight committee actually working to not cover up, but actually go into all of this, right? We're interviewing the Clintons tomorrow. But to be clear, I mean, the destruction of previous administrations, and that in itself, if you look at the network that was involved with Jeffrey Epstein, I mean, to think that there aren't shady things happening in your government, I think would just be a lie to the American people. The fact is that we did have someone come forward. They did say that there was destruction of evidence under the former deputy director of the FBI. And even if you're looking at the original plea deals that Jeffrey Epstein was given, you know, when he was first charged and then also more recently when he then committed suicide in New York, I mean, he should have never gotten off. He should have never had his sentences dropped down to the way that he did. And there are.
Okay. So what's interesting about that is that this is the first time that we've ever heard that someone specific has come forward with information about evidence from the files being destroyed. Of course, the question is, what evidence was destroyed? Why was it destroyed? Who benefited from its destruction? I have to imagine that there must have been information about the Clintons and probably a lot of other powerful people, certainly people connected to the U.S. government who may have had information that was scrubbed out of those files. So I think there would be utility in that as an investigative tool to go in and see where we can go with that. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I showed you an email where Jeffrey Epstein was speaking with, I believe it was Nadia Marcinkova, about the fact that a woman had called him because she was doing a documentary about a billionaire who was sex trafficking women on his private island, and he told her about it. Jeffrey Epstein mentions that same story in an email to Masha Drakova in this email, only he phrases it a little bit more, in a much more illegal fashion. He says, first of all, Masha writes to him, and she's talking about 4 girls or 4 women. Katya has a law firm, corporate law. She also understands blockchain regulations and ecosystem well. Elisa is a film director. She's working on a human rights VR movie. Alexandra is an actress and art expert, has business ideas. All of them are smart, high energy, and great. Now, she's introducing them to Jeffrey Epstein because in a previous email, she had asked, do you want me to send you more girls? Jeffrey responds and says, your friend Elisa told me about the project she's doing, researching a really bad guy that gets children for sex sent to his island, okay? Previously, he had just talked about girls or women being trafficked. Here, he says children for sex sent to his island. And he says, she almost fainted when I told her that person is me. And the final message, she was doing a VR movie, not researching anyone. Interesting that that part appeared in your conversation. So Jeffrey Epstein admits in this email that children are being sent to his island for sex and that he is the subject of that. This is just, again, another direct implication of his activity. We know that's what he was doing, but I think John was the one who had said, you know, we're not going to get Jeffrey Epstein admitting that he was trafficking children. Well, he's talking about it in this instance. This is an interesting one. We don't know who sent this to him, but it was somebody who was living at the Zorro Ranch property. Somebody named Larry. And he says, Jeffrey, I arrive at Zorro tonight at midnight. Something is missing from my closet at my home in Zorro. I want to look harder for this piece before being too concerned. Mono has helped me look, but to no avail. My home is always locked, according to Bryce and Mono. This piece has been in my closet for over 5 years with no problem in the past. I will tell you more in person. Thank you, Larry. So what is so sensitive about this item that is missing from his closet that he doesn't feel comfortable talking about it with Jeffrey Epstein over email? Questions that I want answered. All right. Now, earlier today or late last night, Zero Hedge had determined that Jeffrey Epstein still had an active Nest account. Nest is the Google thermostat account, and it was set up to one of Jeffrey Epstein's known emails, and Zero Hedge had attempted to log in, and they determined that the two-factor authentication code was on there, and it would be his IT guy who would have access to it. So they publicized this, and then shortly after that, Google, I guess, deactivated Jeffrey Epstein's account, And now you can't get in there. It's no longer there. So that is an active indication of Google attempting to cover this up. There was also actually a repository for videos that would have been provided through Logitech security cameras. I tried to access it because in the emails, his security IT guy had sent Jeffrey Epstein the link to access the login and the password. It's an older account, though, that is set up using Adobe Flash. Adobe Flash is no longer supported, and unless you have an old computer that still has it on there, then you can't access it. So I couldn't get in there, and I couldn't see what was in there. But it shows that there is a repository of videos that would have been a live feed from Jeffrey Epstein's security cameras. Not sure if it was at his island or if it was at his Zorro Ranch property or maybe the Paris property or the New York property. But that's something that the FBI needs to look into. All right. Now, that's all on Jeffrey Epstein, but we do have more information about the school district superintendent that was raided yesterday in Los Angeles. But before we do that, I have a very brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. Let me just get that pulled up. Okay, apparently that doesn't work. Huh. My Rumble Studio is not working. Okay, here we go. All right, you guys, banks do not protect you. You all know this. They can freeze your accounts. They can shut off your cards. They can lock you out of your own money overnight. Banks don't protect you. They control you. That's why real financial freedom starts with ownership. So introducing the Rumble Wallet. It's a non-custodial wallet built for people who refuse to give up control. And like you can buy digital currency with Rumble Wallet like Bitcoin and Tether. And you can own Tether Gold, which is real gold on the blockchain. And through Tether Gold, you get direct ownership of physical gold bars, each one fully allocated, verifiable by serial number, verifiable by purity and weight. You can actually get actual gold with it when you get to the point of having a full ounce. It's not paper gold. It's not an IOU. It is real gold without bank vaults. No storage fees, no gatekeepers. You can even buy it or sell it or move it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when traditional gold markets are closed. And if you want, you can get that redeemed for physical gold like I have right here. That is powerful. So when you support creators on Rumble, you can tip them directly using the Rumble wallet. It's peer-to-peer. It's totally outside the banking system. There's no middleman to take a piece off the top, no permission, no cancel button, and the wallet is yours forever. So you can check it out at the QR code on screen or head on over to wallet.rumble.com. And thank you very much to Rumble for continuing to sponsor the program. I appreciate it. All right, so that raid that we talked about yesterday, we have quite a bit more information. There is likely billions of dollars in fraud in California. It's not just at the state level. It's going to be at the local level. It's going to be at the school district level. And there is, to be certain, an investigation related to fraud that is happening here. There is money that is missing from the Los Angeles Unified School District, and the superintendent has got a direct connection to it. On top of the fact that Alberto Carvalho came to the United States as an illegal alien and has been an outspoken critic of President Trump's immigration enforcement policies. He's also been heavily and closely associated with Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom signed a bill in 2025 which hoped to shield schools from ICE agents and any publicly enforced actions taking place there. So he doesn't want them targeting students, whether they're illegal or not. He's got this conflict with the federal government over the enforcement of immigration policy, and it's been escalating. There were a number of high-profile incidents that took place over the last year at LAUSD. Staff has physically blocked federal agents from entering the schools. He also has a history of fraud investigations from his previous job, and this current investigation includes substantial evidence contained in public filings that were tied to a startup AI company. So yesterday, when the FBI agents executed this court-authorized search warrant at the headquarters of the Los Angeles Unified School District. That was in downtown LA. At his home in San Pedro, it's a neighborhood in LA. There was also a third location in Southwest Ranches, Florida. That is near Miami. Carvalho had previously worked there. That was also searched. Federal authorities carried out the raid as part of a criminal investigation into a company called All Here. So All Here was a failed AI startup that was hired to develop the District of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Unified School District's chatbot. The chatbot was supposed to be called Ed. Now, officials have not publicly detailed what the full scope of this probe is, but sources have spoken with the LA Times, and they've said that the investigation involves Carvalho himself, and it's going to be directly focusing on financial matters. Now, the Florida property that was searched has been linked through public records to a woman by the name of Deborah Kerr. Deborah Kerr was a consultant who worked with All Here and has also got long-standing ties to Carvalho from the time that he was working and living in Miami. So LAUSD is the second largest school district in the entire country. He's been there since 2022. And before coming there in 2022, he was working at Miami-Dade County Public Schools. He was the superintendent there for nearly 14 years. Now, in 2020, while he was still the superintendent at Miami-Dade, he founded a nonprofit, and he was the chair of this nonprofit. It was called the Foundation for New Education Initiatives. They sought $1.57 million in terms of a donation from education technology company K-12. The donation was sought while the district was considering a major contract with K-12 as potentially being hired to provide an online learning platform. So you can see there's a conflict of interest there. Carvalho is the superintendent. He has a nonprofit that is not affiliated with the school district. The school district is considering hiring K-12 for a big contract. His 501c3 then asks K-12 for a donation of $1.57 million. So there was a 2021 investigation by the Inspector General for Miami-Dade, and they found no actual violations of ethics policies, but they did conclude that this donation certainly created the appearance of impropriety, if not the impropriety itself. So the funds were ultimately distributed to teachers in the form of $100 gift cards. Sounds like he found a way to get around that so-called impropriety by giving the money away. In Los Angeles, the LA Unified School District awarded a $6 million contract to this company now involved in this investigation, All Here. All Here was hired to develop the AI chatbot Ed, and ultimately they spent about $3 million before the project was withdrawn. And of course, they didn't deliver on anything they were hired to do. The company then later filed for bankruptcy. Their owner was a woman named Joanna Smith Griffin. She has already been charged. She was charged in 2024 with securities fraud, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft. So the partnership drew scrutiny from the federal government, and there were concerns as well about the privacy protection for students, so with their identities and obviously everything that they might be talking to this so-called AI chatbot about. So Carvalho, when this initially was, kind of ramping up, he praised Ed, the chatbot, as revolutionary, but then he later described the company's alleged misconduct as a disturbing and disappointing house of cards, kind of trying to pass off the blame. Certainly it had nothing to do with LAUSD or Carvalho himself. It was a corrupt organization who just took many millions of dollars from the school district and then failed to deliver on their platform. So how could he identify it as something that was revolutionary? How could he say that it had any features at all when, by all appearances, All Here never actually developed anything? He denied any personal involvement in the selection process to choose All Here, and he said that he was going to form a task force to review the failed project, although that never materialized. No task force was ever publicly established. We do know that 1 week before the raid, the Justice Department moved to join a federal lawsuit against LAUSD, alleging the district's decade-old desegregation program discriminates against white students. So this is a wholly separate issue. However, it is nonetheless disturbing and needs to be addressed. Now, the lawsuit was originally filed in January of this year by a group called the 1776 Project Foundation, and they challenged the PHBAO program, which designates schools as predominantly Hispanic, Black, Asian, or other non-Anglo. In order to get that designation, you've got to have 70% of the more of the resident student population falling into those POC categories. From the complaint, the PHBAO schools receive substantially more funding. They are capped at a maximum of 25 students per class, while non-PHBAO schools can have class sizes as large as 34 and a half students. Because of these smaller class size requirements, PHBAO schools are allocated more budgeted positions, including additional teachers, assistant principals, and counselors. So they have fewer students per class. They need more staff to be able to handle the increased size overall of rooms and classes that will need to be taught. So the Department of Justice argues that the program disadvantages approximately 100% of the non-PHBAO schools where higher white student populations are present, and it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment because it uses race as a primary factor in deciding funding and staffing decisions. On February 19th, just earlier this month, AG Pam Bondi and Assistant AG Harmeet Dillon filed a motion to intervene. They said treating Americans equally is not a suggestion, it's a core constitutional guarantee. The era of race-based educational spoils system has long since passed. Now, the FBI has still not made a comment on any specific allegations. Affidavits related to the search warrants are still sealed. The LAUSD has only issued a statement confirming they're obviously aware of the investigation. They're cooperating with federal authorities. I don't believe Carvalho has made any specific statement. He would probably be wise not to. And the Board of Education has scheduled a closed session meeting because they're going to have to discuss the superintendent's employment and exactly what's happening behind the scenes. Still, we have no charges against Carvalho, but by the looks of things, those charges would be likely to come in the near future. Let's see. I need to say thank you to Kenzie Pham, who dropped some Bitcoin through the Rumble wallet, I think. Let me just scroll back up here. Yes. Oh, actually, a USDT. Speaking of Rumble wallet, thank you very much for the USDT. Appreciate that. And then also ZBM says, Deborah Kerr, the actress, can't be her. Love her. I don't think so. And did I say Deborah Kerr? No, hold on. What are the names of the people who are involved in this? Probably not. I would say probably not. Yeah, I don't think so. If that was the case, they probably would have mentioned it in the article. All right. Now, I wanted to see, I think that, okay, so here is some more information. Oh, God, maybe it is. Deborah Kerr, this is down in Florida. Let me actually do a quick search. Deborah Kerr, Florida. Oh, no. What was the name of it? All Here. All Here, not All Good. All Good is Jessica's company. Okay, Miami Herald wrote about it. No, this is, I've never seen this woman before, but that is the Deborah Kerr in question that had her place raided. This woman on screen right there. Okay, so we had the raid at Carvalho's home and office. It seems to be related to the AI chatbot scandal. The Florida home of Deborah Kerr was raided. She was an ed tech salesperson who was connected to Carvalho, and she was the reason that they got the $6 million contract for All Here to build the ed chatbot. The CEO currently being prosecuted for the charges I mentioned: securities fraud, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft. That's in the Southern District of New York. So we've got California, Florida, and the SDNY. So her charges are because she misrepresented All Here's revenue and customer base so that she could fraudulently raise almost $10 million in funds. And then once the valuation had climbed, she sold a big chunk of her stake, and then she spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a down payment for a new home and her wedding. So Carvalho and Smith Griffin made joint appearances at EdTech conferences throughout the spring of 2024. This is where he touted the chatbot's capabilities. There were 74 reports, and Carvalho gave a 20-minute speech touting the tech and the company at the 2024 ASU Global Silicon Valley Summit at the same time that the company was laying off workers because there was no product to deliver. He also bragged about LAUSD's stringent data requirements with third-party vendors. I guess there's a whistleblower who alleges that the chatbot misused the LAUSD students' personally identifying information by including it in all chatbot prompts, even in those where the data wasn't relevant. And then that information, the PII for the students, would then be shared with other third-party companies unnecessarily, and then they would process the prompts on offshore servers, which is also in violation of the district's student privacy rules. So there is quite a bit here. And again, I would imagine that Carvalho is going to find himself with an indictment in the very near future. It's Kerr. Kerr. I mean, wouldn't you pronounce them both the same? Kerr. All right. Now, this is Harmeet Dillon specifically commenting on the racial aspect of the suit that she's brought against LAUSD for the predominantly Hispanic, Black, Asian, and others. And I'm going to have to...
Basically, there was a private lawsuit decades ago, and as a result of that lawsuit, Los Angeles implemented a formula system that if the district, the sort of sub-district within the school district, is 30% or more white, they kind of get the least funding per capita. And if they have more minority students in the district, then they'll get additional funding to lower the ratio of teachers to students to 5.5 to 1. There's also additional magnet funding for those districts that are more minority in makeup than white. And so this is clearly illegal under United States law, the very same law that we pointed to in the Harvard case. And it's not fair or legal to discriminate against any citizen in our country for government benefits on the basis of their race, whatever that race is. So this is the biggest, if not one of the biggest school districts in the United States. And this is, millions of students there. So this is big stuff, and we're going to take it very seriously. Basically.
Okay, so this is very similar, the actions that they're taking, very similar to the ongoing case that the DOJ has against Harvard. Now, Harmeet Dillon also commented on this. Harvard and the Department of Justice have been involved in negotiations to try to come to a settlement. This would ultimately lead to Harvard changing the way that they do things in terms of admission, because they give preference and priority to everybody but white people. And Harmeet Dillon is saying that Harvard was not negotiating in good faith. And so they have now ended the negotiation process, and they're moving ahead with the civil aspect of this, and perhaps even criminal.
Last week, after months of negotiation with Harvard, where we tried to get them to comply with their federal statutory obligation to provide this data to us, we finally threw in the towel and said, we've had it. They're clearly playing games, and they're not serious about settling with the United States. And so we've gone to court to enforce our right as the Department of Justice to review this data. Now, every other agency, DOJ gives them some money, so we have the right to get this information, but every other agency that gives them money also has the right to this data, and you have to wonder what they're hiding. In 2023, United States Supreme Court told them they could no longer discriminate on the basis of race against Asians and whites in that lawsuit, and yet it appears from recent data that's been publicly disclosed they're definitely continuing to discriminate against whites. So let them prove otherwise. I don't know why they're hiding it. Last week.
Well, they're hiding it because, of course, it is a major avenue for money making. Okay, it's another huge racial grift that they have, and they don't want to disclose it because not only are they going to be on the hook to pay the United States government, but of course they're going to have to fundamentally alter the racial makeup of their college, and this is going to change things in a fundamental way. And you're likely going to have a lot of white students who perhaps were unable to go to Harvard and they got turned down because of the color of their skin. Those individuals are also going to have claims against Harvard. It's going to be a major, major set of dominoes that comes falling down. Now, we also have a brief story about a Trump derangement syndrome affected man, a retired professor who recently in a public meeting said that he had a gun and he was hoping to use it to kill President Trump. Well, the Secret Service have now relieved him of that ability. He's from Michigan, and this was just Tuesday night during a city council meeting in Warren, Michigan. His name is Wesley Arnold, and he said, "I am ordering a high-powered ATL-36X arriving shortly, which I hope to actually use to shoot the President of the United States. I'm not kidding." I don't know why he thought that was a good idea. He must not be that smart.
I have,
and this is, again, the audio on his end, not me.
Ordered a high-power ATL-36X arriving shortly, which I hope to actually use to shoot the President of the United States. I'm not kidding. This is
Mr. Arnold.
A very high, powerful item, and it's great for a headshot at a distance. And I didn't want it to be delivered by drone because I wouldn't want something like that to be in the wrong hands. That's it. Thank you.
What an incredibly delusional individual. Okay, so he says he wants to shoot the president. He's now being investigated by the Secret Service, but he just says it's all a big misunderstanding. I just gave the Secret Service my picture I took, he said. And Fox asked him, "You talked to the Secret Service?" "Well, they just left. They're the ones that left before you got here." Mr. Arnold is 80 years old. He ought to know better. They did, however, remove a handgun from the home, but they didn't arrest him. He said, "They may or may not arrest me. We'll see what happens. I'm a harmless old man, and I believe in freedom of speech." That's not freedom of speech. You can't say you're going to shoot the president. Whew. Anyways, the city council president for Warren said he, Mr. Arnold, came up after the meeting to clarify he was referring to a camera lens. I think Mr. Arnold was trying to be a bit cheeky and clever in his rhetoric because ATL-36X, as far as I can tell, is not a real gun. He said, "I have no intent, absolutely no intent of shooting the president. I don't particularly like Mr. Trump. He's done some lousy things. He's done some good things." Well, maybe think about it next time before you go popping off at the mouth. All right. This is a clip that I really enjoyed. Markwayne Mullin was involved in a discussion during a Senate confirmation hearing. This is for Dr. Casey Means, President Trump's nominee for Surgeon General. I can't believe we're 14 months in and we're only just now having this hearing. During the course of that hearing, Mullin basically laid out the facts of how Obamacare has contributed to rising health care costs in America. And Bernie Sanders interrupted him, and Markwayne Mullin basically told him that I didn't ask your opinion. You've been here longer than I've been alive, and you've done nothing to fix the problems that...
I want to address a couple things. During the ranking member's opening statement, he talked about misinformation coming from this administration, and I just want to point out that the Biden Surgeon General, Dr. Murthy, was actually, a court actually ruled against him in 2023, the Fifth Circuit Court, for trying to censor free speech on social media. That's misinformation. And so for us just to throw out an accusation like that with no evidence when the ranking member was completely silent when that took place, it's really some hypocrisy there. When we start talking about healthcare not being affordable, the ranking member and I actually agree on that. The problem is you supported the same tools that got us to where healthcare is unaffordable, because ACA, affordable healthcare, which is completely unaffordable, has risen 3 times faster than inflation itself. Yet we still support it. Not we, you, the Democrats.
I support a national health care program which will cut the cost of
I'm
health
sorry,
care
it's my
per person.
time. It's
But you're
my time.
attacking me.
No,
You're
I'm
going
pointing
to
out
attack
facts.
me. I'm going to respond.
I'm pointing out facts. You can say what you want. I'm just pointing out facts.
No,
The
you're
fact
pointing out lies.
is that it is risen 3 times faster, and we know it. Yet we still want to sit here and defend it. The ranking member wants us to talk about all the death that is supposedly going to be happening because of President Trump and Secretary Kennedy, because how dare they look at a healthcare system that is broken and unaffordable and try to make changes. But yet the definition of insanity is what? Doing the same thing, expecting different results, so we should just sit here and accept it? And how dare we look into vaccines to just simply look to see if maybe vaccines may be a partial cause to autism when it's rising at a rate faster than any country in the nation? How dare us look at science? Oh my goodness. Science is supposed to be perfect. I thought science was always supposed to be studied. I'm for looking into it. As a father of 6 kids, yeah, I want to look into it. I want to know what's causing it. And I will turn over every stone. And so Dr. Means, thank you for saying I want to turn over every stone. Good on you. I'm not a doctor. I'm not sitting here trying to say we shouldn't do something. I'm saying let's go after it. Let's look at it. Let's question what we're doing. Let's look at the healthcare system. We can agree on that one. I just don't want to socialize it. But we can agree that it is absolutely not affordable. 100% not affordable. Yet it was supposed to be affordable. That's what we was sold by Obamacare. So how about we work together and say, hey, so scrap ACA, admit it doesn't work, admit you guys made a mistake, and let's work at something with President Trump to make affordable health care healthy and affordable for everybody. But there's 0 chance you guys could do that. 0 chance. Yet everybody we bring up here, you guys chastise for trying to make changes. God forbid we change and go after try to fix our broken system. Anyways, I ranted too long. Let's talk about some...
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask your opinion on that. And if I cared about your opinion, I would ask you, but I don't care about your opinion.
Well,
you're part of the system. You're part of the problem. You've been sitting here longer than I've even been alive. This is your problem. You should have fixed this a long time ago. You've been railing on it so long. What have you been doing?
I've decided not to run for Surgeon General. You're the nominee. I've decided not to accept that nominee.
That is definitely something we would never accept.
Oh, my God. Yeah, Bernie Sanders has got no legs to stand on. That guy has been in Congress. He's been complaining for decades, and he's done absolutely nothing. Now, we're going to talk about Minnesota and J.D. Vance's efforts to clean up the fraud, or to investigate and then indict the fraud. But first, I want to show you the report that was just released by Tim Walz's administration about the fraud audit that just took place. That's right. Over $9 billion in fraud that Tim Walz's administration admits has taken place. And this is only looking at 14 high-risk Medicaid programs. Doesn't even get into the entirety of it. But literally, when he handed out the report to people in the Minnesota state government, this is what it looked like. Every single line of the report is redacted, except for the headlines. So you and the people in the government of Minnesota cannot even read it, because there isn't a single thing that is available and unredacted. You got the headlines. Okay, well, there's problems, obviously, but you can't know what those problems are. You can't see it. And this is exactly why it's so important that J.D. Vance and this new department that is specifically going to be investigating and prosecuting the frauds, getting the money back as well, is now taking place. So yesterday, Vance and Dr. Oz gave a press conference discussing exactly what they're doing to get this initiative rolling. And most importantly, they are stopping payments to the state of Minnesota. Let's take a listen to J.D. Vance's statement right here on this very important initiative. How are we going to stop the fraud? We stop paying for it. Full stop.
We are going to start very aggressively in the administration cracking down on the people and the organizations that are defrauding Americans. So we're announcing today that we have decided to temporarily halt certain amounts of Medicaid funding that are going to the state of Minnesota in order to ensure that the state of Minnesota takes its obligations seriously to be good stewards of the American people's tax money. Now, what is this going to mean? What this means is that, first of all, the providers on the ground in Minnesota have actually already been paid. The state has paid those providers the money. What we're doing is we are stopping the federal payments that will go to the state government until the state government takes its obligations seriously to stop the fraud that's being perpetrated against the American taxpayer. There are a few different ways that we're doing that. There are a few different affirmative actions that we're taking today. Dr. Oz is going to talk about those, but let me talk a little bit about the spirit of this and why we're doing it. So number one of the examples of fraud that we've seen in Minnesota that we verified that is just awful is that a program that existed to ensure that autistic children had access to some after-school services has made a number of people rich, not by providing services to needy children, but by allowing fraudsters to take money that ought by right go to American citizens and to American families and to set up sham businesses, set up sham clients, set up people who are not even autistic but claim to be autistic in order that they benefit from the money that's out there. Now, what does that mean? Number one, it means that a lot of people are getting rich off the generosity of American taxpayers, but more fundamentally and more importantly than that, it means that there are kids in Minnesota who deserve these services, who need these services, and they're not going to those kids, they're going to fraudsters in Minneapolis. That is unacceptable, and that's the sort of thing that we're cutting off with this action today.
So now that these hundreds of millions of dollars are being cut off from the state of Minnesota, interestingly, the state of Minnesota has already paid out these monies. And so that means that Minnesota is not going to be reimbursed by the federal government. Now, we've already learned that out of all of these various providers, nobody, well, maybe six of them, if I'm not mistaken, have attempted to certify themselves as legitimate. So that means the vast majority of them, 99%, are essentially admitting that they're not legitimate. Here is Dr. Oz talking about one of the schemes as to how people were making money. Minnesota is going to be in a very difficult position, not being able to get reimbursed for all of this fraud.
We have to take these crimes seriously and treat them as seriously as if they were bank robberies, because they're more dangerous than bank robberies. People get hurt during them. Let me share some of these horrible stories. The vice president started highlighting autism. Let's get into the details of what's really going on in Minnesota. These are real cases from our group at CMS. These are adjudicated numbers. There's a fraud scheme in Minnesota where criminals, soon to be criminals, pay moms $1,000 roughly in order to enroll their children as being autistic, falsely, dishonestly claiming their children are autistic. They then bill Medicaid, this has already happened, millions of dollars for services that were never rendered, never delivered by a qualified staff member. These schemes disproportionately involve immigrant communities. They're insulated, they're able to organize efforts, and sometimes they don't understand what's going on. And it ultimately diverts resources away from kids who truly have autism. Because if every kid in the neighborhood has autism, then nobody has autism. We have to take...
None of them have autism. It's all just a giant grift coming out of the Somali community. All right. Now, here he's talking about a specific organization that was billing at a rate which is simply impossible. So it makes it very obvious that this is fraud. And of course, they're one of those organizations who has not attempted to certify themselves as legitimate.
There's one behavioral health organization, Mr. Vice President, in Minnesota. They received $11.5 million in Medicaid payments, but the top biller submitted 450 days where they claimed they were working more than 24 hours a day. I mean, even in the White House, that's tough. It's hard to work more than 24 hours a day. How it didn't get picked up is shocking to us at CMS. There are other red flags.
Well, literally in the state of Minnesota, nobody was checking. They were literally just writing blank checks.
in Minnesota, including hundreds of beneficiaries receiving treatment linked to one location, which was impossible physically to be true. We had 8 beneficiaries in one of these substance use disorder centers, 8 who were already dead, but the center was still billing us.
Wow.
Not only did they let the person pass, they kept billing for it. That's the level of avarice we're talking about. So CMS is done paying and chasing. We don't think jail sentences are the right way out. These criminals flee the country. Many are foreign nationals. Instead, we're launching the largest action against fraud that we've ever taken. The money's not going to ever leave the building again. We're going to start draining the swamp of the crooks that have.
So the money, obviously, not going to pay it out. That's going to give Minnesota some type of impetus to clean this up. Secondarily, the foreign nationals that are involved in this, if they are immigrants, if they have any type of legal status, they must be denaturalized. They must get sent home. If we can prosecute them, we should. We need to ensure that these people do not continue to siphon money out of our system. Now, J.D. Vance is leading the efforts on this, but President Trump has put forth a candidate to become the actual official fraud czar. And he specifically mentioned in his confirmation hearing the investigation that is taking place in Minnesota. His name is Colin McDonald. So this fraud crackdown, according to McDonald, is going to serve as the blueprint for this new Department of Justice group, which is going to be focused exclusively on protecting the money from the federal government, from taxpayers, to stop it from going to all of these scams. So this blueprint is instead going to be used as the essentially just like a template that they can take from Minnesota. They can implement it in Ohio. They can implement it in Maine. They can implement it in Massachusetts. They can implement it in California. So Colin says the work in Minnesota has been pivotal, and work has been, which means it's been ongoing. This didn't just begin this week. The work of the U.S. Attorney's Office there and the personnel there has been pivotal in highlighting the problems of fraud that permeate our taxpayer-funded programs. That sort of effort is what the National Fraud Enforcement Division will be looking to do and scale to an extent that we've not seen before within the Department of Justice. This nominee has been tapped by President Trump in January, just days after the establishment of this new Department of Justice category. They're exclusively investigating, prosecuting, and seeking remedy for the fraud affecting the federal government. We've never seen anything like this in the history of the United States. We've never identified fraud on this scale. He says, I will be working with the inspectors general community, with our federal agencies and federal partners, with our state and local partners to ensure that we find the fraud where it's occurring and that we have the resources to prosecute it, to investigate it and prosecute it, and ultimately ensure that the fraud we're seeing annually perpetrated against these programs comes to an end. He appeared yesterday before the Senate Judiciary Committee, where he was grilled about the things he was going to do at this new office, how it's going to operate, how it will be independent of the White House. And of course, J.D. Vance is going to be like the head over this department within the Department of Justice. McDonald explained that his office will be tackling all fraud. No fraud is too big. No fraud is too small. The Government Accountability Office estimates we have somewhere between $320 and $520 billion in taxpayer funds that go to fraud on an annual basis. My commitment is to work tirelessly to build a division, a national fraud enforcement division, where no fraud is too big for the Justice Department, no fraud is too small for the Justice Department. And obviously, this is something that I think has long overdue. This should have happened many years ago, but of course, there was no will to do anything about this years ago. So many people had their hands in the pot. They were being paid and paid off. Now here, J.D. Vance is commenting on Somali fraudsters in Ohio.
I don't know what the top line number, Bill, is, and I think that's unfortunate that nobody has ever tried to take a systematic look at how much fraud there is in the federal government. How many illegal aliens are on Medicaid? We know that it's billions and billions of dollars that should go to American citizens. It's going to illegal aliens. How many fraudulent daycare centers have been set up where that money should go to American citizens to help their kids get into childcare? Instead, it's being stolen from them by illegal aliens in our country. How much have government officials actually been complicit in this fraud because some of them have gotten wealthy, or at the least they've gotten campaign donations from the people who have gotten rich from that fraud? The story of the American economy in so many ways during the Biden administration bill is that the American citizen was ripped off for people who shouldn't be here and by politicians who should have known better. And the Trump administration, the president has asked me to take a full, whole government approach to trying to understand that. And what does that mean, Bill? That means, first of all, the Department of Justice is going to be investigating and, where possible, throwing fraudsters in prison. But it's also going to mean that Scott Bessent and some of our friends at the Treasury Department, we're going to be looking at income tax records. We're going to be trying to understand how it is that the American people have been defrauded, how it is that people have used resources and programs that should go to American citizens instead have been going to fraudulent uses. There's a whole host of tools that we have that have never been used. And the president, I talked about this a couple of months ago and said, what if we just did everything that we could to stop the fraud that's being committed against the American taxpayer? The president said, great idea, let's do it. And we're going to work on that very aggressively over the next year.
So I can't undersell how important what he just said is, because all too often you've got these siloed effects that happen. Various federal agencies that either do not communicate with one another, or who simply don't exchange information, or, have no idea. The right hand has no idea what the left hand is doing. But with J.D. Vance, obviously, as the vice president of the United States, working to oversee the interconnected assistance of every single aspect of the federal government, whatever tool we have to root out the fraud, to stop it from happening, to also claw back money and put people in prison. That's what we're going to do. Now, the current U.S. attorney for Minnesota, Daniel Rosen, wants people to know that we should expect the pace of prosecutions to increase in Minnesota by a considerable margin, and I would want nothing less.
First of all, I will give you numbers with great precision here. On the last day of my predecessor's term, of Andy Lugar's term, there were 64 assistant U.S. attorneys. I took office on the 10th of October. Between Andy's last day and my starting, we went from 64 down to 47. We now have 36 assistant U.S. attorneys. Our resources are greater than they were 2 months ago by a considerable margin, and the pace of prosecutions and fraud will increase at a considerable margin, and you'll see that roll out over the coming weeks and months.
Some U.S. attorneys left in recent months?
Oh, yeah, well, I have left to mention that's, well, it's been well reported that some U.S. attorneys have left in recent months.
Adequate staffing to carry out the fraud?
We have more than adequate staffing to carry out the fraud. We have been reinforced in dramatic numbers by the Department of Justice and by other departments of the federal government. And fraud investigations are increasing in pace. Fraud prosecutions, you will see, are going to be dramatically increasing in pace. If you're committing fraud in the state of Minnesota, it's really not a good time to be doing it.
It's not a good time to be doing it. Can't wait to see it. Obviously, just because you haven't seen it yet doesn't mean that it isn't occurring. All right. Now, one final piece here. The FBI office out of Minnesota has just wrapped up a large gang called the Family Mob. And this gang was involved in everything that you would imagine. Trafficking, drugs, weapons, all sorts of petty crimes. Let's go ahead and take a listen to Rick Vanek. He is the interim special agent in charge.
To announce and report the dismantlement and disruption of the Family Mob gang and criminal enterprise network operating.
Why is the UAW guy there? And anybody have any idea about that? There's the Teamsters are there with them. That's interesting.
Throughout the metropolitan area here in Minneapolis. Since the 1990s, this gang has conspired to deliver deadly narcotics to our neighborhoods and ushered in violence to aid in their efforts to claim control over their so-called territory. This morning, prior to dawn, 8 SWAT teams dispersed across this region, we ultimately executed 14 search warrants aimed to seize narcotics, guns, and other evidence of their criminal conduct. At the close of business today, we expect that 12 defendants, most with violent criminal histories, will have been taken into custody. Since last year, including the efforts this morning, so far our collective effort has seized 14 firearms, 6.5 kilograms of fentanyl, 2 kilograms of cocaine, nearly 800 grams of methamphetamine, nearly 200 grams of crack, 5 vehicles, and nearly $100,000 in cash. The distribution of illegal narcotics and the spread of violence in our communities will not be tolerated. Our communities should know that the FBI will continue to partner with exceptional agencies. Those partnerships will stand to send a very clear message to those who seek to fill the void created by the dismantlement of the family mob network. That message is this: the FBI will build bridges, foster partnerships, expend the talents of our workforce, and expend all resources at our disposal to deliver the same fate of those networks as the one met by family mob.
All right, so this family mob, as he said, has been a multi-decade-long criminal enterprise in Minneapolis. Multiple criminal warrants were executed across the Twin Cities yesterday. Charges are expected for at least a dozen people, and the announcement came at that press conference that we just watched the clip from. Daniel Rosen, the U.S. attorney, was accompanied by the Hennepin County Sheriff, Dawana Witt, and Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara. Saw him in the background on Rosen's right. And this was a coordinated effort between federal and local agencies. I like to see that. They were running a drug trafficking operation distributing narcotics, which included fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine throughout Minneapolis-St. Paul. And they were described at times as running an open drug market on East Lake Street in Minneapolis and in other locations. They have increased their territory over the last year. They've been involved not only in the drug trafficking, but also weapons violations, shootings, and homicides. Here are the 4, bosses of the family mob that were arrested. And I hope that we start seeing Somalis get rounded up as well. I'm sorry, this is actually the final clip that I want to play for you guys. This is Kristi Gnome, and this actually goes to what I was talking about earlier in the show, about that entrenched bureaucratic deep state. This is so deep within the federal government that it's almost difficult to imagine just how entrenched they are. Before we go into that, I have a very quick message, final message from our friends on Rumble. You guys, if you or someone you love struggles with blood sugar and A1C, you need to hear this message. It's well known that the expensive meds and popular shots that people are taking have dangerous side effects. Creator's Bounty has developed the perfect alternative. It's an herbal supplement called LOHE-Trim. It's a 100% natural formula that's proven to dramatically lower your blood sugar and A1C. It uses 7 healthy ingredients, no stimulants, no junk. These are 7 ingredients that altogether would cost you over $150 if you bought them separately. But this is the best part. You can take this and there's no bad side effects, only good ones. We're talking about sugar cravings gone, inflammation reduced, stable energy throughout the day with 0 crashes. Seriously, most people are getting better results than they did on those harsh meds, but without all of the risk. And LOHE-Trim is also made here in the USA at an FDA-registered facility. It's also fully tested and backed by a no-questions-asked 90-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it and make sure that you know whether or not it's going to work for you. And the friendly folks at Creator's Bounty also offer fast and free shipping 5 days a week from their distribution facility in Oklahoma. So to find it yourself, head on over to creatorsbounty.com/rumble and take advantage of the special offer today. You can also use that QR code that you see on screen and receive up to 50% off. Thank you so much to Creator's Bounty. All right. Finally, Kristi Gnome appeared with Patrick Bet-David, and she talks about a couple of shocking things. First of all, very similar to what we had at the FBI and the DOJ, hidden rooms, misclassifications designed to hide important evidence and information from incoming administration, as well as an entire department that had been set up just to spy on Kristi Gnome. Take a listen.
I can't believe what I found since I've been in this department. I just found the other day a whole room on this campus that was a secret SCIF, secure facility, that had files nobody knew existed. So we just happened to have
So now they have to go through all of that stuff, figure out what it is, why it was being hidden, who had actually hidden it, who's responsible, is there criminal culpability? If so, please go after them.
An employee walked by a door and wondered what it was and started asking questions. We went in there. There was individuals working there that had secret files that nobody knew about on some of these most controversial topics like that. And now I've got that turned over to attorneys, and we're getting to the bottom of what exactly happened there. You know, we have CBP, which is Customs and Border Protection. They know every traveler that comes into this country, every good that comes in. They're the ones who assess and collect all of the tariffs. But the information that they had on travelers that came in during COVID, what are national labs, which I also have national labs under my jurisdiction. They're scientists that participated with that Wuhan lab, how they were traveling back and forth between each other and working on those experiments. It's been eye-opening. And I'll tell you, Patrick, even from the time I came into this office, it was, Elon and his team were extremely helpful to me. They helped me identify that some of my own employees in my department had downloaded software on my phone and my laptop to spy on me.
Stop it.
To record our meetings.
Wow.
They had done that to several of the politicals.
Wow.
And so we ended up bringing in people, and that was something that if you didn't have those technology experts here in the department looking at all of our laptops and our phones and recognizing that kind of software, it would still be happening today. So one of the things I need to do and continue to do is partner with technology companies and experts to bring them in and help us, because many times in
So Kristi Gnome had employees at the DHS that were spying on her telephone, private communications, text messages, web history, and also spying on her laptop. That is completely unforgivable. There is no world in which that should have happened. But like she said, it was Doge. It was Elon Musk's people that figured it out and exposed it for her. All right, I don't have any more gold pills to go through. I don't have any more rants to go through. So we're going to go ahead and call it there. And I will see you guys tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Peace. Do make sure you hit that. Do make sure you hit the red pill. Do make sure you hit the like button.